source for Israel in English. Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. We're live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. It's currently 7 a.m. in New York and 2 p.m. here in Israel. I'm Devo Klein, and here is your roundup of all of the latest developments that are coming out of Israel. Clashes on the border with Hezbollah continued over the weekend, with the IDF renewing its airstrikes in southern Lebanon. The targets included Hezbollah weapons depots, training camps, and other terrorist infrastructure. Now, the strikes come as Israel has expressed frustration over Lebanon's failure to disarm Hezbollah, even as both countries sent civilian envoys to a ceasefire oversight committee that met in Nakura. The Prime Minister's office said the meeting was held in a positive spirit, but made clear that disarmament of Hezbollah is mandatory. Tensions remain high as both Lebanon and Israel attempt to take down the Iranian proxy group, though the terror group themselves have absolutely no intention of disarming or changing their mission of attacking Israel. Just take a look at this propaganda video that's on your screens right now. This was published by the terror group. The video includes pictures of Israeli bases, posts, and civilian towns, as the terror group believes that they are all legitimate targets. That is who the IDF is targeting in southern Lebanon in recent days. And in Gaza, clashes continue, with the IDF saying it eliminated 3 terror operatives who crossed the yellow line and approached troops. Meanwhile, the leader of the Popular Forces Militia in Rafah has named its new leader. Hassan al-Duhaini will replace Yasser Abu Shabab, who was killed last week in internal clashes, according to IDF intelligence. The militia group has vowed to continue operating against Hamas in Rafah and is working to boost morale in the southern Gaza Strip. All this as searches for the body of the final Israeli hostage are set to be renewed. Hamas and the Red Cross are reportedly looking in the Zaytun neighborhood to find the remains of Master Sergeant Ran Gvili. And joining me now to discuss all of these latest security developments is Yoni Ben Menachem of the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Yoni, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So let's discuss the latest developments coming out of Gaza first, because, as it seems and as it stands right now, the longer it takes to find the body of Ran Gvili, the more time Hamas has to insert itself as the dominant power in Gaza. They refuse to disarm and they are reportedly carrying out executions. So what do you anticipate for Trump's phase 2 of his Gaza plan? As every day goes by, we seem to be getting further and further away from his vision.
No, I don't think so. Hamas knows exactly where the body of the Israeli hostage is. They're just playing games as if they are looking for it, searching for it. And eventually, they know that they cannot go forward with the Trump plan without returning his body. So it's only a matter of time. And Israel is very stubborn on this issue, at this point, and will not go forward without his body returned back to his family. As for Hamas, I think it's not only Hamas. I think the whole Middle East is waiting for the crucial meeting in the end of the month between Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and President Trump. I don't know if it will be in the White House or in Florida. There are different reports about it. But in that meeting, they will decide about the course of the Trump's peace plan, and will give the priorities concerning Gaza and concerning Syria and Lebanon. So we have to wait and see what will be concluded in this meeting.
Right, there's definitely a lot to discuss between the two leaders, but I'm thinking and assuming that one of the topics that may come up in this meeting that the leaders are supposed to have is regarding the Turkish forces, as the phase 2ing does include the International Stabilization Force. And, Israel remains adamant that no Turkish soldier, will be a part of the International Stabilization Force. And I think it's rightfully so. Ankara have been big critics of Israel. But as of right now, no other nation is really stepping up to the plate. Do you think that Israel will have to take over phase 2 somehow if they don't want to let Turkish forces in? I mean, how do you see phase 2 being implemented otherwise?
I think President Trump understands very well the Israeli opposition to the presence of these Turkish forces. This is a red Israeli line, and I don't think that the President Trump will enforce it on Israel and make her accept this idea. And we'll have to wait and see the other countries that are supposed to be participating in this international force for stabilization of the situation. And still there is time. We're talking about only the middle of January, where they're supposed to be deployed in Gaza. So the Americans have a few weeks to arrange all the necessary arrangements.
Mm-hmm. So just to recap, you think that as it stands right now, the plan is going it's going according to plan, is what you're saying? Because that's not the feeling on the ground, is it?
Look, of course there are difficulties, but President Trump is very determined, and we saw that the first stage of this plan, which is returning the hostages, is almost finished, almost over, successfully. There's only one body which is supposed to be returned to Israel. So we can say that 99% of this, the first stage, was successful. Now we have to insist on what was agreed upon in this plan between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. There will be no deviations from the original plan. And I think this is what the meeting is about in Washington or in Florida, to get the agreement between Trump and Netanyahu and go forward without any difficulties. I think that they are very coordinated, and even if there are some disputes about some points, I think that they will find the golden path to overcome all the obstacles. The main obstacle is not Israel. The main obstacle is Hamas, which refused to disarm and trying to gain time and hoping for an early Israeli elections and dragging its feet. Maybe they think that Trump will lose in the elections next year to the Congress and the Senate, whatever, what's called the mid-elections. And this is what they don't have any other options. They know that the end is coming and the countdown already began.
Mm-hmm. The end is definitely coming. But you mentioned civilian elections in Gaza, so that kind of leads me to my next question. Is Hamas still, popular in Gaza? We have the opposition, the Popular Forces Militia, combating Hamas. But if, say, elections were held today in Gaza, wouldn't Hamas be winning again? I mean, what's your take on that?
Of course, all of Gaza is Hamas. Don't listen to somebody who's telling you otherwise. All of them supporting Hamas in spite of the disaster and the second Nakba, which this terror organization brought upon the people of Gaza. They hate Hamas, but they hate the Jews more than Hamas. So they will elect Hamas, not only in Gaza, also in the West Bank. And believe me, there are not going to be any elections in the coming 2 years, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to, the topic of indoctrination toward hate and raising the next generation of terrorists, really, Israel just has no choice but to wait it out? Or is there anything that we can do to really protect Israel's civilians on the southern border?
We have to have a very meaningful presence of the Israeli military in Gaza. There's no hurry. We don't have to withdraw. Now we're occupying about 60% of the Gaza area. We have to stay there. We have to persuade Trump to go ahead with the immigration plan and just allow all the Palestinians in Gaza that want to go abroad to let them go. And this means that Trump has to put the pressure on Egypt. I think President Trump understands that. Maybe he's not saying it now because he wants to, he's behaving very diplomatically and he's very smart guy. He's maneuvering. But eventually everybody knows that Gaza, with 100% support for Hamas, cannot exist along the Israeli border where the Israeli settlements suffered this horrific massacre on the 7th of October.
Absolutely. And I want to just take a moment to move to Lebanon because there are significant efforts by the international community to maintain the ceasefire, the fragile ceasefire. But all Hezbollah seems to be interested in is attacking Israel. They're posting these propaganda videos. They're showing off and saying we're strong as ever before. They're obviously being funded by the Islamic regime in Iran, and they keep getting these brand new weapons to show off. So, why is Israel entertaining a diplomatic solution when the terror group is unwilling to engage themselves and they refuse to disarm?
Look, I don't think that anyone has any illusions that these terror organizations, Hezbollah and Hamas, will disarm. The only power in the Middle East that can disarm these terror organizations, it's not the international force, it's only the IDF can do the job. And this is known to President Trump and all the other countries that have interest in Lebanon. They know that Hezbollah is holding the Lebanese government as a hostage, and they are enforcing their will on the Lebanese government, getting weapons from Iran, getting a lot of money from Iran, and they are preparing for the next round. So it's only a matter of time until Israel will strike Hezbollah again. And I think that this is one of the main purposes of the Netanyahu's visit to Washington to meet with Trump, to get the green line. The Americans are supporting Israel on this issue of Hezbollah 100%.
So there's, a lot of regional shifts going on. This, as you know, you've been a Middle East expert and analyst for quite some time now. You know how this region is quickly changing and developing. And at the end of the day, it all just goes to the same source. All roads lead to the Islamic regime in Iran. They're the ones funding all of these regional proxies. So over the years, if you could have a look back at the past few decades and where Israel stands right now, obviously after we've had, this multi-front war, is Israel in a good place right now? Are we able to take on all of these fronts, whether it be Lebanon or perhaps even Syria, whatever's going on in Judea and Samaria? Are we prepared? Are we ready to take this on?
Yes, we are prepared. And if you compare it to the situation where we were before October 7th, we are in the best position now. Our strategic situation has improved significantly, and we have good advantages. We have good control of most of Gaza. We have the Hermon mountain. We have the buffer zone area in Syria, inside Syria. And we have Israeli army outposts in south of Lebanon. This we didn't have before October 7th. So this is all a front position for an attack. And believe me, Israel changed its strategy, and now we're going to attack. We're not going to defense. We're going for an attack very rapidly and very strongly on all our enemies. So, and they know it. They know it. So, and the second round is right around the corner. Iran is reorganizing, remanufacturing ballistic missiles, supporting Hezbollah, arming Hezbollah, sending money to Hezbollah, sending money and weapons to the Houthis in Yemen, trying to support Hamas also in Gaza, whatever is left from Hamas. So they are preparing for the second round. So it's only a matter of time that we'll have to go for another round, strike Iran, strike the Houthis in Yemen, strike Hezbollah, and strike Hamas. Hezbollah is going to be first after the meeting between Netanyahu and Trump.
And just finally, before we wrap up, just because you mentioned the buffer zone that we currently hold in the Golan area in our border with Syria, Do you not think that Israel is going to be pressured, perhaps even in the meeting between Netanyahu and Trump, the upcoming meeting? Do you think Israel might be pressured to give that buffer zone back?
Look, everything is possible in diplomacy, but this is a matter of negotiations. And if Israel will withdraw, Israel will get something in return. I don't know what the prime minister is planning, what is the strategy, but I think that President Trump understands the importance of staying in the buffer zone and staying on the Golan, on the Hermon mountain. So I think that if he will want to make a deal, like, he likes to make deals, so he will make a deal with Israel, and Israel will get a very good compensation if it withdraw from the buffer zone.
Interesting. Definitely a lot of things to think about. But I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, because we are out of time. Yoni Ben Menachem, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And last week, Roman Goffman has been named the new Israeli Mossad chief, switching outgoing David Barnea in this prestigious role. But now a new investigative report released by Israel's Channel 13 is revealing Goffman as a true hero and the highest-ranking Israeli injured on the morning of October 7th. Channel 13 released this video on your screen showing Goffman battling Hamas terrorists with nothing on him but his personal firearm. No helmet, no tactical vest, and no warning of what was about to unfold. In the video, he is seen firing at Hamas terrorists on the road and then limping to take cover as he suffered multiple gun wounds to his lower leg. The report continues to detail the medics on the scene who used a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. The soldiers then ordered an evacuation helicopter for the brigadier general, the highest-ranking officer to be injured in the battle. This new revelation is renewing hope within Israeli society, having such a heroic and selfless figure taking on one of the most challenging security roles in Israel. And speaking of renewing hope, an inspiring message from the 221st Battalion, instructed with dismantling terror infrastructure in Sajaiya, the battalion serving its 6th round in reserves. They dedicated their battle against terror to their families who are waiting for them at home. Take a look.
כבוד המשפחות, בני הזוג, שרק בזכותם אנחנו צריכים לעשות תעסוקה משמעותית, לפגוע במחבלים, להרוס את כל התשתיות על הקרקע ותת הקרקע. תודה לכם. שיהיה לאחור ותחתקים.
And over the weekend, mass flooding took over the streets of Israel's Negev region, that's in the south of Israel. Filled with desert mountains and Arava streams, the heavy rains from over the weekend poured into the roads leading in and out of Eilat, Israel's most southern city. The roads were subsequently blocked, with Israeli police and rescue teams on high alert. Video footage from over the weekend shows mass exodus and long lines of traffic as vacationers in Eilat attempted to flee before the roads shut down. Authorities warned that additional roads in Eilat and the Arava may be closing through the night as flooding continues to batter the south of Israel. And finally, a big milestone for the world of basketball. NBA superstar Deni Avdija has broken the record and is now the highest scoring Israeli in the NBA's history. The Portland Trail Blazers forward surpassed Omri Caspi's career total on Friday night when he scored 35 points against Detroit to reach 4,648 career points, a record he achieved far faster than any Israeli before him. This season, Avdija has transformed from a reliable starter into a full-fledged NBA star. He is Portland's #1 scoring option, primary ball handler, and top perimeter defender, a role that has him averaging an incredible 26.2 points per game. putting him in the same statistical company with top NBA superstars. Nicknamed Turbo, Avdia leads the entire NBA in drives per game and continues to be a force on both ends of the floor. If Avdia maintains his current form, he is on track to becoming Israel's first ever NBA All-Star. And joining me now to discuss this development is former basketball player Tal Brody. Tal, thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Very nice to see the clips on Danny, not at 3 or 5 in the morning. So you see it live time in the middle of the day. That's great.
Absolutely. I want to talk about these clips because and Avdia's achievement of breaking the record, it was really only a matter of time until he broke this record, as we reported earlier, because his career is only just beginning and he's already being hailed as a superstar. Can you talk about the impact that Danny is having on the world of Israeli basketball right now?
Well, he's having quite a large impact because it's what he's doing. It's not only on the basketball court, it's before and after the games, and what he's doing when the team is traveling all over throughout the United States, the Jewish communities, the federations, the JCCs are bringing the kids out, and also the adults are coming out as well. And, Danny's very congenial. He's when he can, he's meeting them and saying a few words before the game. It's not comfortable to do that, but he's doing it, and he's very good with the community in Portland because he's on a very busy schedule. But still, he's making us proud. And I know Danny since his beginning I built the school for the city of Herzliya, and he started out in Herzliya. Went over to Maccabi at about 14, 15 years old and started to grow in size, and basically made his career with the U16 national youth team and U18, because when he came over to Maccabi with the main team, he was averaging about 4 points a game. And then with the U16 and the U18, where the basketball scouts in the NBA saw him, he was already one of the most, let's say, the best players in Europe, and about 17 points a game, leading the championship for the Israeli team. Also in rebounding, maybe 7, 8 rebounds a game, and assisting. And then from that to go into Washington in a situation where you have Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook that took about 50% of all the shots, but Danny saw, and he was smart enough to go slowly in and not to really rush himself into the game. So he did all the supplemental work that really you don't write about in the newspaper. He did the defense, he did the assisting, he did the screening. And then when he had the opportunity to go into Portland, it was probably a shock for him then, but he came into a situation where Damian Leonard was injured, and True Holiday and Sharp, they're doing a great job. And then Danny just fitted in because they needed somebody also to make points, to score. And Danny filled that position more than anybody expected him to do in Portland. And he became one of the leading players, I would say, in the NBA from the young group of guys that were drafted in. He was 9th in the NBA draft, but he's doing a great job, and I think he has a very good shot to be on the NBA All-Star in the All-Star game, and that's in February 13th, if I'm not mistaken, and it'll be great to see him there. I mean, everybody's watching the TV, waking up in the early hours of the morning, and yeah, if he gets that honor, that would be a great honor for himself and for Israel and for Maccabi Tel Aviv and Bnei Herzliya and everybody together. I mean, it's great to watch his career, and he does it in the best way and the best, possible way you can. He's very conservative. He's not a Schwitzer, or whatnot. It's not bragging, and he's doing his job, and he knows that all of Israel's watching him every day, every game that they can see. And we all wish him the best of luck. I mean, he's doing a great job. And when Damian Leonard comes back, they're going to have even a better team, and they could get into the playoffs.
That's right.
And nobody should look at it that maybe he's going to be scoring less. But it's not only the points, because now you're going to have two good, very good scorers out there, if not three, and he's going to have to fill a spot. And what you can see in his statistics, he's not only scoring, but also he's rebounding quite a bit, and he's making a lot of assists, which is very helpful to the team. And that gives him the complete type of player, as well as being the best type of player that you could have in a locker room when you're losing in the first half of the game and not disturbing the feeling of the team. And so
It's like you say, he's a leader on the court and also in the locker room. He's a leader, in his game, but also in his personality. I wanna touch on some of the stats that you mentioned that I have right here in front of me. He's averaging 26.2 points per game, 7.2 rebounds, and 6.2 assists. But you mentioned his team, the Trailblazers, they're not necessarily performing incredibly well. They're ranked 10th in the Western Conference, and they have a record of 9 wins and 14 losses. So the stats don't necessarily align. I want to ask your opinion. Do you think this is a further testament to Denny's skills on the court, or could his current form be thanks also to the underperformance of some of his teammates? What's your take on that?
It's not that the underperformance. I think that they're playing very nicely. It's just that the NBA has an abundance of great teams. Everybody thought in the NBA, I remember meeting David Stern, the commissioner, and everybody was thinking what's going to be when Michael Jordan retires from basketball. But his retirement, all of a sudden, that the drafts brought in such an amount of good players, and in all the teams, you have good ball players. So as far as Portland is concerned, they have some good ball players on that team, but the other teams also have great ball players. And as I say, what Damian Lillard is injured. He's a great ball player, and he's going to be coming back, and it's going to be a more balanced team. And he could pull the team towards the middle, maybe towards the end of the season, that the team could get together and get into the playoffs. I mean, they had a tough beginning. Danny is for sure
they've got
doing his
quite a way to
job.
go.
But he's doing his job. They've been losing some very tough games, close games, but it could all turn around. The same with Maccabi. The team is not doing well up to now, but maybe with a few changes. But even if not, that beating the fourth team in the EuroLeague, the team from Lithuania, it gives a little bit of an inspiration towards this Thursday's game, that maybe if we can win against the French team, then the team could start moving forward, and towards the middle or the end of the season, we could be okay. It's been very disappointing so far, but we hope there'll be a change.
Yeah, but also the viewers at home just absolutely love a good comeback story. Now, we are almost out of time. We have really just a minute on the clock. But if my research serves me right, you gave up a bit to play in the NBA, to play in Israel. Could you sum that up in just a minute?
Well, first of all, the NBA in 1965, even though that being selected by Sporting News as one of the 10 best players coming out of college that year, and I think 12th in the draft, Wilt Chamberlain was making $100,000 a year, not $55 million for 4 years of Denny, or Steph Curry for 1 year. So it was a different story. So when I went to the Maccabiah games in Israel, the 7th Maccabiah, Maccabi gave me a challenge to come for 1 year. I never thought it's going to be close to over 50 years in Israel. We're already married to Tirza. We have 3 children and 13 grandchildren here. I never thought that, but no regrets. I'll take that same Masa, take that same road. And the NBA today has changed. Television has been unbelievably good to the NBA. And I think that, as I say, you have so many abundance of good teams. It's very interesting to watch. even at 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning, it's great to see the NBA games.
Yeah, and it's really nice to see, the Israeli basketball community coming together and watching the NBA. As you say, it's not just the European League. They're also watching the NBA, but we are unfortunately out of time. Tel Brody, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and speaking with us.
Just one thing, that it's not only Maccabi Tel Aviv today in the EuroLeague, it's 2 Tel Aviv teams that are playing in the EuroLeague, and that's a great honor for Israeli basketball.
Tal,
and we hope
I'm
that
so
the
sorry.
Jerusalem team will get in.
Tal, I have to interrupt you because we're live and it's going to cut off. I'm so sorry, but thank you so much for joining us on the show. That is a wrap for this edition of When you buy from Blessed by Israel, you're not just shopping, you're standing with the families of Israel's heartland. Every bottle of delicious olive oil, handcrafted necklace, or jar of honey carries the spirit of Judea and Samaria. These, along with many more products, are the tastes, scents, and stories of the Promised Land, made by people rebuilding our biblical homeland every day. Shop now at blessedbyisrael.com and use ILTV's special code BLESSISRAEL for 10% off on your first order.
Hey everyone, we know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land, we're here for you. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review.
It's day 787 of the war in Gaza. The ceasefire is generally holding, but local clashes continue. The IDF confirms that the commander of Hamas's East Rafah battalion, his deputy, and 2 other operatives were killed yesterday after they tried to escape a tunnel complex in eastern Rafah, an area under full IDF control where dozens of Hamas fighters remain trapped underground. The 4 were spotted emerging from the tunnel and were killed by IDF troops and Air Force strikes. The army says more than 30 terror operatives have been killed in recent weeks as they attempted to flee, with another 8 captured. Hamas sources estimate 60 to 80 fighters are still holed up below the city. The army says that ground and Air Force strikes eliminated the battalion commander, his deputy, a company commander, and another operative identified as the son of senior Hamas official Ghazi Hamad. Israel refuses any deal that allows the fighters free passage and continues to demand Hamas disarm, a core element of President Trump's 20-point Gaza plan. The IDF believes the remaining operatives are running out of food and supplies and may be starving underground.
Well, joining us now to discuss these ongoing skirmishes in the region is Colonel Rich Outzen, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Colonel Outzen, thank you so much for joining us today. Always a pleasure to have you on. Let's start with the Pope's visit to Lebanon. He just wrapped up a recent visit to Turkey, now Lebanon. What is the significance of this visit at this time?
Well, coming as the first visit for Pope Leo to the region, I think it shows that he's going to be very focused in the way that other popes have been focused on different regions, Africa, the church in Asia, that the fate of the small vestigial Catholic communities in the Middle East matters a great deal to him. So he is going to be very engaged with the U.S. government. As you know, he's by origin an American pope. I think he's going to be engaged with Israel and with the governments of the region to make sure that the right of people to practice their Catholic faith and Christian faith is preserved, but also that the physical presence of these very small, fragile communities is protected. I think it's a very big statement of his priorities, and he's going to be in the seat for a while, so that's significant for all the countries that have large Catholic communities.
Now, Hezbollah, switching gears a little bit, has been rearming, as we know, in violation of the ceasefire pretty much throughout this ceasefire time, and the IDF has been responding militarily. How does the United States see this issue, and do you anticipate that there will be further escalation in Lebanon?
I do, unfortunately. You may know I was in Israel in 2006 and serving on active military service, so I got to see that Lebanon war unfold, and it's the unfortunate dynamic that the government of Lebanon does not fully control its borders, and all the armed forces, does not have a monopoly of force in its area. President Trump is unequivocal in his desire for peace in the region and for these ceasefires to hold, but he's a pragmatic man. And at the end of the day, when you have a group like Hezbollah that is outside of full government control, you're going to have to enforce what in Israel my friends referred to as the rules of the game. And that means that every time they start to launch rockets and build up militarily on the border, there's going to have to be strikes and there's going to have to be attacks on the command and control. So I think that's not incompatible with the long-term trajectory to peace, but Israel would be foolish not to do these things and just to allow another buildup on its borders. We saw that in 2006.
All right, moving on to Syria, we know that the United States is very much prioritizing a security agreement with Syria and Israel. That's their goal. What's your take on this most recent event in Syria with forces of al-Shara allegedly having some involvement in some of these recent attacks on the IDF during a counter-terror operation?
Well, especially in the south of Syria is an area of great sensitivity for Israel. This is a very delicate balancing act for Shara. Shara, on the one hand, was brought into power by pretty hardline Islamist and nationalist forces, militias. And so on the one hand, he would lose faith if he's not seen, or face if he was not seen as protecting Syrian territory, and Israel's sort of raids into Syria and presence in southern Syria is problematic in terms of keeping his coalition together. At the same time, he clearly does not want to get into a toe-to-toe with the IDF, nor are his forces capable of doing that. When we've seen this previously, as happened with the Druze communities and some of the fighting where his forces got involved as opposed to local militias, he pretty quickly pulled them back and said, I really don't want to get into a situation where we're getting airstrikes from the Israeli Air Force. So I think it's probable, because he does not have full control over all the militias and even the entire state apparatus yet, that there'll be continued incidents like that. But I'm pretty certain that he does not want to go to a full military confrontation with Israel, that he would certainly lose, and that would destabilize a very fragile situation that he has in Damascus.
Well, let's hope that the U.S. can pressure al-Shara and the relevant parties into an agreement that works for both sides. We do have to leave it there, but I want to thank you for joining us today, Colonel Rich Outzen.
Good to be with you.
And now the IDF is weighing a major escalation in Syria after new intelligence suggests that Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara's own general intelligence forces may have directly fired on Israeli troops during this weekend's operation in Beit Jin. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
What began as a routine arrest raid has now turned into one of the most dangerous incidents since Israel entered southern Syria late last year. Israeli media reports that if the IDF confirms regime involvement, the army could shift from targeted arrests to a far more aggressive strategy, including frequent, precise airstrikes to break the growing network of terrorist cells near the Syrian-Israeli border. Khan News says at least some of the operatives planning attacks against IDF troops and against Druze communities are directly linked to President al-Shara's general intelligence. These same cells have reportedly been behind earlier attacks in Qadar in eastern Syria. The weekend operation began when members of the IDF's 55th Reserve Brigade entered Beit Jin to arrest two brothers from the Al-Jama al-Islamiyah terror group. The two were suspected of planting explosives and helping launch a missile at Israel. They were taken into custody without resistance, but as the troops withdrew, gunmen opened fire. A heavy gunfight erupted. 6 Israeli soldiers were wounded, 3 of them seriously. The brigade commander himself was hit while trying to reach trapped soldiers. Drones, helicopters, and fighter jets were rushed in, striking pre-planned targets and providing cover for the extraction. Syrian media claims 13 people were killed. Israel said that several terrorists were eliminated. Syria is accusing Israel of trying to ignite the region, but Israeli officials say just the opposite, that it's the al-Shara regime that's fanning the flames, backing militias that have targeted Druze and other minorities for months. For nearly a year, the IDF has maintained 9 positions inside southern Syria, mostly in the UN buffer zone, preventing terror elements from filling the void created after the fall of the al-Assad regime. Troops operate as far as 15 kilometers inside Syria to seize weapons before they can be smuggled to hostile forces. With new evidence pointing to direct Syrian regime involvement, the IDF may move from a defensive posture to a new, more forceful, preventative phase.
Well, in Tel Aviv, what may be the final hostages rally took place last night at Hostage Square. After more than 2 years of weekly demonstrations, the Hostages and Missing Families Forum says it is scaling back activities. Only 2 deceased hostages taken on October 7th remain in Gaza, and families say they will continue pressing mediators until both are brought home. Our correspondent India Naftali reports from Tel Aviv. India, what can you tell us?
Yes, Emily, nearly all of Israel's hostages have now been returned, and that means the mass demonstrations we've seen for years already are starting to slow down. Now, it doesn't mean the last 2 hostages are any less important. It means the families who have led this movement for more than 2 years are finally getting a small reprieve from the exhausting work of organizing these rallies, and they're now shifting their energy and resources to directly help those families who are still waiting.
Last night, hundreds came to Hostages Square for what could be the last time. For many Israelis, this rally has been a weekly ritual of grief, unity, and pressure on Hamas and the Israeli government. For more than 2 years, the square in central Tel Aviv has been the center of Israel's campaign to bring the hostages home. The remaining hostages include police officer Ran Gavili, who was killed defending Kibbutz Alumim, and Thai agricultural worker Sudisak Riddalag, murdered in Kibbutz Be'eri. Both were abducted into Gaza, and their remains have not yet been returned. Families say they feel mocked by Hamas and are urging international mediators not to move to any further stage of ceasefire talks until the last 2 hostages come home. Many here say the rallies cannot end until the mission is complete. One grieving father explained how they will keep going.
We will continue on a week-to-week basis, think what is the best alternative and actions in order to bring back Ran Gavili and the Thai citizen Ran Tilak, in order to keep the pressure and the awareness on the topic. We will keep doing these types of demonstrations, rallies in different parts of Israel, and we always said from the beginning, all for one, one for all. And we will continue to do so until we get those 2 remaining hostages back to their families.
Emily, we are now closer than ever to seeing all of the hostages returned. It's going to be a huge moment when it happens, and will be the first time in a very long time that there are officially no hostages in Gaza. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu met on Friday with the family of Ran Gavili, the last Israeli hostage whose remains are held in Gaza. According to the Prime Minister's office, Netanyahu praised the Gavili family's dignified and steadfast conduct and reiterated Israel's commitment to return all hostages, living and deceased. Back to you.
All right, thank you, India, for that update.
And moving on, Israel's already robust air defense systems are getting a brand new upgrade, one that is expected to change the game of air defense and save Israel millions of dollars. ILTV's Devo Klein shows us the all-new laser beam, Or Eitan.
Meet the laser system that is changing the game. The Or Eitan should be fully operational within the coming weeks, so why does Israel need yet another aerial defense system? You may have heard of the Iron Dome, tasked with intercepting short-range rockets and mortars like the ones we see from Hamas and Hezbollah that fire at Israel. Or perhaps the David Sling system, which intercepts mid-range missiles inside the atmosphere, used to intercept Houthi or Iranian attacks. But there's one more. The Arrow's impressive technology detects long-range and high-altitude threats, such as long-range ballistic missiles and ICBMs outside of the atmosphere. As Israel faces a multi-front war from hostile neighbors, it is essential to possess these different systems. But there's one problem. Each interceptor can cost up to $50,000. So while the systems are impressive, they are extremely expensive. What if Israel could intercept aerial threats while saving financial resources? That is the mission that Rafael and Elbit Systems set out to solve. Fast forward, and we are getting the first ever laser beam, or Or Eitan. This system intercepts all types of aerial threats, ranging from simple mortars to UAVs to long-range ballistic missiles. The Iron Beam does it all. Israel is expected to field laser beam batteries across the country within weeks, thus being able to use them in operational settings very soon for the first time around the world. With regional tensions rising, this system will play a pivotal role in Israeli security, and it's pretty cool too.
The week-long IDF anti-terror op in northern Samaria has come to an end. The IDF and Shin Bet have withdrawn from the city of Tubas after a 4-day counter-terror operation in the northeastern West Bank. The army is contending with continuing extremist Jewish violence. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz has more.
Israeli forces pulled out of Tubas, Aqaba, and Tayassir after earlier leaving Tamun and the Farah refugee camp. According to Wafa, troops detained or questioned about 200 Palestinians, with 10 still in custody. The IDF said troops searched hundreds of buildings and arrested several terror operatives and arms dealers. The military says it will continue operations to prevent terror infrastructure from taking hold in the area. Further south, in the village of Al-Loz, the IDF declared a closed military zone after a Jewish extremist attack wounded several Palestinians near Bethlehem. The attack reportedly left several Palestinians wounded, including one shot. Troops and police were dispatched following reports of a violent confrontation between Israelis and Palestinians. The army said there were reports of stone throwing and of gunfire directed at Palestinians. The IDF said soldiers used riot dispersal means and declared a closed military zone. And 3 members of Yamam, the undercover counterterrorism unit of the Israel Border Police, including an officer, were questioned over their suspected involvement in the Jenin incident, in which 2 wanted terrorists were shot dead. The investigation was initiated following recorded footage that appears to show the terrorists being shot after allegedly surrendering and exiting unarmed from a building surrounded by security forces. The Department for the Investigation of the Police announced that it opened a criminal probe into the incident.
Australia's Jewish community is sounding the alarm over a sharp rise in anti-Semitism as new data and a Senate probe into bias reveal a reality far more dangerous than many Australians realize. ILTV's Mayan Hoffman has more from this report from Down Under.
A new report by the Executive Council of Australian Jewry records 1,654 anti-Semitic incidents between October 2024 and September 2025, still about 3 times higher than before October 7th. Overall, numbers are slightly down from last year's record, but serious attacks like arson and vandalism have risen, including the firebombing of the Adass Israel Synagogue in Melbourne and multiple attacks on Jewish businesses and synagogues in Sydney. The report warns that anti-Jewish racism has moved from the fringes into the mainstream, on campuses, in workplaces, and in the cultural sector. Jewish students are staying away from lectures. Parents say their children are abused on public transport, and many adults now think twice before wearing visible Jewish symbols.
But after October 7th, suddenly the radicals, and not only the radicals in the Islamic community, a vast majority of the Islamic community started, with their everyday anti-Semitism, and they have allies to justify it.
Inside the community, the response is mixed. Some are drawing closer to Jewish life, with fuller synagogues and packed Aliyah information nights, while others simply try to keep their heads down and avoid any talk of Israel in professional settings.
The future of Australia is actually quite dark. I have always seen myself and describe myself as a proud Australian patriot, so I hope fighting back is the way, but I'm not going to lie, I feel like I have a backup plan.
At the same time, a Senate committee was expected to hear submissions about alleged systemic anti-Israel bias at the ABC, from combative interviews with Israeli officials to hours of airtime for activists accusing Israel of genocide, while detailed legal rebuttals and reports on Hamas abuses receive little or no coverage. The discussion was tabled at the last minute, but community advocates argue that when the national broadcaster repeatedly frames Israel as a villain, it helps normalize hostility toward Australian Jews.
What's alarming is the severity of some of these things, with firebombing of synagogues and Jewish businesses, they're both very triggering things for our community.
I believe that we should just be proud of who we are and not be ashamed of our identity, because if we hide who we are, then no one will understand what we're like.
And on the topic of U.S.-Israel relations, this week, the largest ever delegation of some 1,000 Christian pastors and influencers are visiting Israel in a special program led by the Friends of Zion Museum in Jerusalem and the Foreign Ministry. They're in Israel to train to become ambassadors in combating the ideological war against Israel and the West. Joining us now with more on this historic mission is Dr. Mike Evans, the founder of the Friends of Zion Heritage Center, one of the leading voices in the Christian world today, known for his lifelong work in combating anti-Semitism and a close confidant of President Donald Trump. Dr. Evans, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
So can you tell us a little bit about this delegation, the largest ever to visit from the United States? I mean, what prompted such a visit and what's its purpose?
Well, there's been an ideological war going on in the United States. So let's just take the U.S. stock market. Around 1/3 of the U.S. stock market is controlled by the Gulf states, over $3 trillion. So you have Qatar as an example, who's dropped $400 billion into America to influence social media. They're now using AI to do it, and algorithm and bots, like they did the universities. So it's all intentional to poison the minds of the young people of America. And our objective is to use the pulpit, and the pulpit will speak louder than the propaganda.
And what is on the agenda for this delegation?
It's very strategic. We have probably over 40 meetings with in the Ambassador Summit with the top leaders of the nation. Example, we go to Nova tomorrow. We're going to have an event with the hostages and their families to show solidarity. Then we have our opening with Mike Huckabee that evening. We have an event at the Kotel, in which the 1,000 leaders will take the names of the Israelis that were massacred, put them in the cracks of the wall, pray for their family. They'll go to Mount Herzl with the flowers and the flags, and they'll put them on the graves of all the soldiers killed since October 7th, and the widows will be there also. So it's a time to educate and activate these leaders. And by the way, over 200 of them are connected with Donald Trump. They're part of the Trump faith movement. They're the most powerful. They own media stations, television stations. They're massive broadcasters. And we have to do it. We have to do it because we have some crazies out there like Tucker Carlson, who's saying Israel is not an ally anymore. We don't need the state of Israel. We'll tell that to the victims of 9/11.
Absolutely. And, you know, speaking of Tucker Carlson and in general, I mean, as we just saw, Christian support for Israel is also eroding. I mean, polls are consistently showing that Christian youth are moving away from Israel. So, I mean, what, in your opinion, needs to be done to maintain the close relationship between Israel and the American Christian community?
The state of Israel has never fought an ideological war. Shimon Peres, my chairman, told me the new wars are ideological, economic, media, and proxy wars. Now, the state of Israel has a problem. Only 0.12% of the population is Israelis. That means for every 10,000 people, only 12 are Israelis. We're 9.7% of the global population. So we need to partner with the state of Israel. The majority of Zionists in the world are not Jewish. They're Christian Zionists. We need to partner with them. We need to use our influence in social media to help win these hearts and minds of these young people. They've been poisoned by the enemies of Israel. By the way, they're not only in the Gulf states, they're throughout Europe and other parts of the world, and they have a massive amounts of money and influence thanks to AI. They're using bots now to do it, but we can win them over. I've told the prime minister, I've told the leaders of the nation, we're on your team. We're going to do this. Listen, these 1,000 pastors are not coming here for a tour. They're coming here to be ambassadors, to partner with the state of Israel, to fight the lies against the nation of Israel.
Such absolutely important work, especially these days. Dr. Mike Evans, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great honor. All the best.
For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at ILTV.tv or download the ILTV Plus app. That's it for ILTV's weekly review. See you next week.
Emunah's Rishonot program is transforming the landscape of religious women's leadership in Israel, giving participants the tools, confidence, and sisterhood they need to shape the country's future. Our Mayan Hoffman sat down with journalist and social entrepreneur Avital Indig, a participant in the program and a World Emunah delegate at the recent World Zionist Congress in Jerusalem, in order to understand its impact.
Emunah has spent 90 years identifying the most urgent needs in Israeli society and stepping in where it matters most. From children's homes to trauma therapy centers, Emunah has always focused on strengthening Israeli families and communities. The Rishonot program grew out of that same mission, empowering religious women with the tools, networks, and vision to lead. ILTV asked Avital Indig how she first became involved.
So I started with one of the first programs, so it wasn't like now where everyone knows about it and all, you tell your friends you have to go there, and so for me it was different.
She explained that the program has three main goals, beginning with the deep, on-the-ground understanding of Israeli society.
The first one is for us to get to know the challenges of the Israeli people. So it's a journey that we take. They take us from place to place geographically, and we meet the people and we talk about all the challenges and difficulties, and we get inspired by the people of Israel.
The second goal is about personal growth and leadership.
The second goal is to empower yourself and to know yourself and to know your strengths and weaknesses, and to give you the feeling that the sky's the limit.
But for Avital, the third goal, the network, may be the most powerful. Rishonot creates a mission-driven sisterhood where women from diverse backgrounds unite around shared values, trust, and a genuine desire to strengthen Israeli society. It's a community that not only supports one another, but actively mobilizes around each woman's goals and initiatives, turning personal leadership into collective impact.
It's more of a spider web even. It's not just a network, because we have each other's back and we help each other. And it makes you so much more stronger to be a part of this amazing network.
That sense of sisterhood has created a unique atmosphere among the women.
I've never seen anything like it, the sisterhood that is there. It's like this special bond.
One moment especially stayed with her, an overnight retreat where participants shared the most intimate parts of their lives.
Every girl in the program had to talk about important moments in her life. It made us so much more connected to each other. It was an amazing night.
Today, after October 7th, programs like Rishonot feel more essential than ever.
I think it's essential for everyone in the world, but especially now it's such challenging times right now. It's different when you get together with women and you have the space and you have the time to process together.
For Emunah, leadership begins with connection to each other, to community, and to the future of the State of Israel.
And today, we once again have the pleasure of hearing from Yael Eckstein, president of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, as she brings us the latest highlights and inspiring updates from the fellowship's ongoing work.
Shalom, my friends from here in Israel. I'm Yael Eckstein, and here are two fellowship projects that you should know about this week. Number one, Tomer and Dolev are new parents, and their baby came in a very unexpected way. They live in a small apartment right outside of Jerusalem, and at 25 weeks, suddenly she felt extreme pain in her stomach. She was rushed to the hospital, and immediately they realized that she needed life-saving medical medical intervention. The fellowship was there for them when the baby was in NICU to provide physical, emotional, and financial support. And we continue to be there for them today. Number 2, the fellowship recently opened a resilience center in Sdot Negev. This is the area right on the border with the Gaza Strip. All of the Israeli residents there are experiencing still the trauma of the October 7th attacks and war for 2 years already. The fellowship is there to give them the tools that they need to continue to live life in joy, in faith, and with resilience. This is one of dozens of resilience centers that the fellowship has helped build because we believe the people of Israel need to be strong to continue living out this destiny that God has promised. Well, there you have it, friends. There are 2 fellowship projects that you now know about. Join me here next week, same place, same time, for more updates directly from the Holy Land. Shalom.
To ILTV on the Hour. We're live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. I'm Devo Klein, and here is your roundup of the latest developments coming out of Israel. Netanyahu will not resign from his political role if he is pardoned from his trial. The Prime Minister delivered this message during a joint press conference with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz as the two met in Jerusalem. New details emerging from this meeting suggest that Chancellor Merz is supportive of a quote-unquote pathway to a 2-state solution. To that, Netanyahu has reportedly replied, "They had a Palestinian state in Gaza and they used it to try and destroy the only Jewish state. We will not allow a state that wishes to destroy us." This development comes after the chancellor's meetings with President Isaac Herzog. There, the two leaders discussed more on relations between the nations. They both praised the friendship between the countries, reminiscing on memorable moments such as the sale of the Arrow 3s to Germany and unwavering German support for Israel on the international stage, especially ever since October 7th. Take a listen.
Nun haben wir gesehen, dass das Vorgehen der israelischen Armee im Gaza uns vor einige Dilemmata gestellt hat. Wir haben darauf reagiert. Wir haben aber auch gesehen, dass wir bis heute im Grundsatz keinerlei Differenzen haben. Israel hat das Recht, sich selbst zu verteidigen, und das wird auch so bleiben, denn nur so lässt sich das Existenzrecht Israels sichern. Wir stehen zu diesem Existenzrecht Israels und wir werden Israel dabei immer unterstützen.
Clashes on the border with Hezbollah continued over the weekend, with the IDF renewing its airstrikes in southern Lebanon. The targets included Hezbollah weapons depots, training camps, and other terrorist infrastructure. The strikes come as Israel has expressed frustration over Lebanon's failure to disarm Hezbollah, even as both countries sent civilian envoys to a ceasefire oversight committee that met in Nakura. The Prime Minister's office said the meeting was held in a positive spirit, but made clear that disarmament of Hezbollah is mandatory. Tensions remain high as both Lebanon and Israel attempt to take down the Iranian proxy group, though the terror group has absolutely no intention of disarming or changing their mission of attacking Israel. Just take a look at this propaganda video published by the Hezbollah terror group. The video includes pictures of Israeli bases, posts, and civilian towns, as the terror group believes that they are all legitimate targets. That is who the IDF is targeting in southern Lebanon in recent days. And in Gaza, clashes also continue, with the IDF saying it eliminated 3 terror operatives who crossed the yellow line and approached troops. Meanwhile, the leader of the Popular Forces Militia in Rafah has named its new leader. Hassan al-Duhaini will replace Yasser Abu Shabab, who was killed last week in internal clashes, according to IDF intelligence. The militia group has vowed to continue operating against Hamas and is working to boost morale in the southern Gaza Strip. All this as searches for the body of the final Israeli hostage are set to be renewed. Hamas and the Red Cross are reportedly looking in the Zaytun neighborhood to find the remains of Master Sergeant Ran Gvili. Though experts say Hamas knows of his whereabouts and is dragging out the process as much as possible. And last week, Roman Goffman has been named the new Israeli Mossad chief, switching outgoing David Barnea in this prestigious role. But now, a new investigative report released by Israel's Channel 13 is revealing Goffman as a true hero and the highest-ranking Israeli injured on the morning of October 7th. Channel 13 released this video showing Goffman battling Hamas terrorists with nothing but his personal firearm, no helmet, no tactical vest, and no warning of what was unfolding. In the video, he is seen firing at Hamas terrorists on the road and then limping to take cover as he suffered multiple gun wounds to his lower leg. The report continues to detail the medics on the scene who used a tourniquet to stop the bleeding and then called an evacuation helicopter for the Brigadier General, the highest-ranking officer to be injured in battle. This revelation is sparking hope within Israeli societies, having such a hero and a selfless figure in such a prestigious role. And that's a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. I'm Devo Klein, and thank you so much for joining us for this update, and thanks for watching.
Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Emily Schrader, and coming up in today's newscast, Israel receives one of 2 remaining hostage bodies from Hamas. Israel and Lebanon hold historic talks to discuss potential normalization. The Islamic Republic doubles down on efforts to recruit Israeli citizens for espionage in new push. Well, another hostage has finally been brought home, and Israel is now closer than ever to having every single hostage back home, with just one fallen hostage still in Gaza. Today marks a major milestone in this years-long struggle. Our correspondent India Naftali in Tel Aviv has more. India, what can you tell us?
Yes, Emily, Israel confirmed the identification of the body returned yesterday from Gaza is Thai national Sutisak Rintalak, who was a 42-year-old agricultural worker murdered by Hamas terrorists near Kibbutz Be'eri on October 7th and taken into Gaza. After the Palestinian Islamic Jihad claimed to have located his remains in northern Gaza, the body was transferred to the Red Cross and then to the IDF, where forensic teams completed the identification. IDF troops were seen saluting the casket as it crossed back into Israeli control. With Rintalak now headed home for burial, only one slain hostage remains in Gaza. Police Master Sergeant Ran Gvili, killed defending Kibbutz Elomim on October 7th. The Prime Minister's office says Israel shares the Rintalak family's deep sorrow and remains determined and committed to bringing Gvili home, stressing that Hamas must honor its commitments under the current agreement.
All right, India will be joining us again shortly for more updates. For now, it's day 790 of the war in Gaza. Troops came under attack in Rafah, leading to the wounding of 5 soldiers. The IDF launched a manhunt for the attackers with artillery and airstrikes ordered minutes later. Amid the fighting, U.S. President Trump says Phase 2 of the Gaza plan will happen soon. We have more from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
IDF troops in Rafah came under attack when 2 terror operatives emerged from a tunnel and approached soldiers. Both were shot dead. Minutes later, a third placed an explosive on an armored vehicle and fled. 5 soldiers were wounded, 1 seriously. The IDF launched a massive manhunt using artillery and airstrikes. An airstrike targeting a Hamas operative involved in the attack killed at least 6, according to Palestinian sources. Meanwhile, in Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump says Phase 2 of his Gaza peace plan is going to happen pretty soon, despite only Phase 1 being agreed to by Israel and Hamas.
They had a problem today, I understand, with a bomb that went off and hurt some people pretty badly, probably killed some people. They're telling me it just happened. But it's going on. We have peace in the Middle East. People don't realize it.
The U.S. pushed a UN resolution to support post-war Gaza management, but disputes over Hamas disarmament and reconstruction have stalled the process. In Jerusalem, the Knesset held a symbolic vote endorsing Trump's plan. Only 39 of 120 lawmakers voted, all in favor. The coalition skipped the vote to avoid splits over the plan's future Palestinian state references.
The Knesset of Israel, by virtue of its sovereign authority, hereby reaffirms President Trump's 20-point plan, calls upon its neighboring states to establish regional peace with it, and expresses its gratitude to the President for his efforts.
Meanwhile, Israel announced it will reopen the Rafah border crossing for Palestinians to exit Gaza into Egypt. Cairo denies coordination and insists the crossing must be two-way. Israel says the move follows the ceasefire agreement and political directives.
Well, we also received update this afternoon that the leader of the popular forces, the militia in Gaza, believed to be working or coordinating with Israel, Yasser Abu Shabab, was also assassinated this afternoon. Now, officials from Israel and Lebanon held their first direct talks in decades. The representatives met in UNIFIL headquarters on the Israel-Lebanon border and were joined by Special U.S. Envoy Morgan Ortagus, along with French and UNIFIL officials. This happens despite the fact that the IDF conducted strikes against Hezbollah targets this afternoon.
It was a rare and significant development on a northern border still on the brink between a fragile year-long ceasefire and a return to war. The meeting was part of a U.S.-led ceasefire monitoring mechanism. For the first time, both countries sent civilian representatives. Israel was represented by Dr. Uri Reznik of the National Security Council and Lebanon by former Ambassador Simon Karam. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office confirmed he ordered the inclusion of a civilian delegate, calling the move an initial attempt to create a basis for relationship and economic cooperation. Beirut said it agreed to participate only after learning Israel would also send a non-military official.
This is a historic development. Be in no doubt that this direct meeting between Israel and Lebanon took place as a result of Prime Minister Netanyahu's efforts to change the face of the Middle East. As the Prime Minister has said, there are unique opportunities to create peace with our neighbors.
The talks are part of the cessation of hostilities implementation mechanism established after the ceasefire reached with Hezbollah just over a year ago. The last time Israel and Lebanon held talks in Nakura was in the 2022 U.S.-brokered maritime border deal, but those talks were indirect. These were face-to-face. Israel described the meeting as positive, with both sides agreeing to explore limited economic cooperation. But Jerusalem stressed that Hezbollah's disarmament is non-negotiable and not linked to any economic track. The talks come as tensions have been on the rise. The IDF says Hezbollah has violated the 2024 ceasefire repeatedly, moving rockets from Syria and rebuilding infrastructure north of the Litani, while keeping operatives embedded in border villages. Israel's conducted more than 1,200 ground raids and hundreds of airstrikes since the ceasefire, including a rare strike in Beirut last month that killed the group's chief of staff.
Well, joining us now to discuss the ceasefire violations by Hamas and the rapidly developing regional events is Colonel Richard Kemp, the former commander of the British forces. Colonel Kemp, thank you so much for joining us today. Always a pleasure to have you here on ILTV. To start, we've seen repeated violations by Hamas, including in the past day with planting an IED on an IDF vehicle. I want to ask you, is this ceasefire a lost cause?
I think it's not the end of the story, shall we say. We may well see a continuation of the ceasefire along current lines with relatively low activities by both sides. And of course, Israel maintaining the ceasefire as far as it possibly can, and responding only to serious threats or attacks by Hamas. It's, of course, Hamas that's responsible for all of the ceasefire violations we've seen so far. So I think we may well see a continuation of that for a bit. But at some stage, particularly if the level of Hamas activity increases, and Hamas is not only carrying out low-level attacks against the IDF, but also is working very hard to consolidate its own position of influence in the area that it controls. But so I think we come to a point where Hamas has got to be finally dealt with. Now I know that Trump's plan calls for some kind of international disarmament, neutralization of Hamas. Whether that happens or not is very much an open question. We have to hope it will, but I think the reality is probably that the only people who are going to actually physically disarm, confront Hamas and fight Hamas to take their weapons away from them, because they're not going to give them up voluntarily, is of course the IDF.
Well, I want to ask you, we did just get the report about the assassination of Yasser Abu Shabab, who is the head of the Popular Forces, considered to be one of the opposition forces or limited opposition forces within Gaza against Hamas. What impact will this have, if any, on the situation on the ground?
Well, I think it's very difficult for the forces, the non-Israeli forces ranged against Hamas within Gaza. They've been under constant threat. They've been under constant attack. Hamas has done everything it can to prevent them from establishing control, from gaining the upper hand over them. And this, of course, is a big blow to them. I hope that there will be a replacement put in position who will have the same level of authority as the man that's been assassinated. But I think we can expect to see continued violence against Gazans who want to resist Hamas, and it's not just in terms of wanting to resist Hamas by use of military force, which has happened in some cases, but anybody who just rejects Hamas's control, who stands up against Hamas in any way or resists it, in many cases have been killed, executed, and they will continue to do that because, of course, they're one of the greatest threats to them is losing the control of the civilian population.
Absolutely. Interesting how we hear very little condemnation of the attacks on Gazans by Hamas themselves. But I want to go back to this phase 1 or phase 2, hopefully, that we'll get to. It hasn't been completed yet. We do still have one more hostage remaining, despite the fact it's been weeks. Yet Hamas has been adamant, as you mentioned, that they will not abide by phase 2 either, refusing to disarm, refusing to surrender governance. How will the international community respond to this violation by Hamas?
Well, I don't think the international community, if there is such a thing, will do a thing. The United States and Israel are the only, in my view, the only significant movers in this game. Obviously, they can influence countries like Qatar and Turkey, which have to a certain extent, have influence over Hamas. But it's only really the US that has the kind of diplomatic power to maybe work towards achieving compliance with Hamas's agreement and with President Trump's agreement on the diplomatic front. And it's only Israel that has the capability of dealing with it and forcing this to happen if they don't do it voluntarily, which, as I said before, and as you kind of also said, there's no indication that Hamas is going to do so. I think Hamas is... We don't know, of course, and we don't even know, Hamas is... anything they say cannot be relied on. Even if they reject everything, now, that could change. It could possibly change, but I'm not optimistic that it will. I don't think that unless they're forced to comply, that they're going to do so.
All right, well, Israel has signaled a willingness to some extent to accept in full the 20-point plan, despite calls for eventual Palestinian statehood. How likely do you think that is to come to fruition?
I think it's extremely unlikely. And of course, Israel had to go along with the proposal that there might be an eventual Palestinian state. And of course, I think that's always to an extent been Israel's policy, that and Israel, indeed, in the past, the Israeli governments have offered the Palestinians their own state and has been rejected on numerous occasions. But I think the likelihood of it happening is so low, not even so much because of Israel. I think Israel obviously has to have as its number one priority the protection of its people from a future Palestinian state, sovereign state. And that can only be achieved by IDF forces being deployed within that state, which means that it's not a sovereign state.
Indeed, great questions. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you, Colonel Richard Kemp.
Thank you.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has selected his military secretary, Major General Roman Goffman, to lead the Mossad intelligence agency. Goffman will replace current director David Barnea when his term ends in June 2026. Netanyahu said Goffman's long military record, including command roles in the Armored Corps, district divisions, brigades, and training command, plus his tactical ingenuity, deep understanding of the enemy, and complete discretion, make him the right choice. The appointment still requires approval by the Senior Appointments Advisory Committee.
3 million Israelis are dealing with trauma since October 7th. To help Israelis heal, Hadassah is there, with the largest rehabilitation center in Jerusalem, world-renowned medical centers, and youth villages. It's said, saving a life saves the world. Imagine helping millions. This is Hadassah, a life-changing force in Israel and the world.
Well, thanks to Germany lifting its embargo on Israel, arms trade has now resumed. As a result, Germany has deployed Arrow 3 batteries across the country, becoming the first ever European nation to do so. ILTV's Devo Klein has more.
On Wednesday morning at an airbase in Schönewalde, Germany, the first of its kind ceremony was taking place. Germany became the very first European nation to deploy the Arrow 3 air defense system, engineered, built, and delivered by the State of Israel. The Arrow 3 is geared to intercept ballistic missiles as a counter to Moscow's growing threat. The Arrow 3 is one of Israel's most impressive air defense systems, operating at altitudes above 100 kilometers, which is well outside of Earth's atmosphere, and with a range of 2,400 kilometers, the stationary Arrow system stands out and overshadows shorter-range air systems. Marked with the Israel Aerospace Industries emblem, the sale of the Arrow 3 highlights the incredibly healthy arms trade between Israel and Germany, despite a previously placed embargo, which the Israeli Director General of the Defense Ministry pointed out. According to the Israel Aerospace Industries, a number of countries have already expressed interest in purchasing the technology, since Arrow 3 helped to thwart Iran's missile attacks on Israel in April and October 2024.
And now Iranian intelligence is escalating its attempts to recruit Israelis as spies, including teenagers. A local mayor just revealed that millions of Israelis have received direct messages from Iranian agents in recent weeks. Our correspondent India Naftali is back with us. India, what can you tell us about these recent Iranian attempts?
That's right, Emily. This is one of the most aggressive recruitment campaigns Israel has ever seen, and it's targeting everyone from adults to high school children. Iranian agents are sending texts directly to Israeli phones, offering money in exchange for information or to carry out an espionage mission. Apparently, the number of people who are responding is alarming. Iranian intelligence has intensified its efforts to recruit Israelis since the outbreak of direct war between the countries in June. The mayor of Bat Yam, a city just south of Tel Aviv, revealed that millions of Israelis, including himself, have received these messages. The texts do not try to hide their source. They openly say they are from Iranian agents, and they offer payment for espionage missions inside Israel. But what is concerning is how many people are falling for it. A shocking number of Israelis have clicked on the links and made contact, some out of curiosity and others to make extra money. In recent weeks, the Shin Bet, Israel's security agency, has asked municipalities to help launch a nationwide warning campaign. The goal? To reach anyone who may have engaged with Iranian operatives before they cross a legal line. In a well-known high school, a double-digit number of students admitted to clicking the links and communicating with Iranian accounts. To counter this, mayors across Israel are starting programs to educate teens about online espionage attempts and how quickly a simple click can become a criminal offense. The mayor of Bat Yam released a video message urging residents to report any contact with Iranian agents.
מדובר בעבירות חמורות מאוד, ומי שייעצר על ידי השב"כ יגרום לעצמו נזק בלתי הפיך.
Within 24 hours, 10 people came forward. The mayor said the goal is not only to protect national security, but also to protect Israelis from receiving one of the most serious indictments in the legal system. Authorities say these recruitment efforts are likely to continue and could even increase. The message from security officials is simple: do not click, do not respond, and report any contact immediately. Back to you, Emily.
All right, thank you, India, for that update. Definitely something to be aware of for everyone here in Israel. And now a spokesperson for the Guinness World Records confirmed that the organization is not accepting new record submissions from Israel, citing the sensitive situation since the outbreak of the war with Hamas. A Guinness official told the Times of Israel that we are aware of just how sensitive this is at the moment. We truly do believe in record breaking for everyone, everywhere, but the company did not explain why unaffiliated record attempts are still blocked. The policy first implemented in November 2023, 1 month after the October 7th Hamas massacre, was revealed after an Israeli charity said its application was rejected. Channel 12 reported that the Israeli organization Matnat Chaim, which promotes voluntary kidney donations, had approached Guinness about an event bringing together 2,000 donors in Jerusalem. The group was told submissions from Israel are not being accepted. Guinness says its policy is reviewed monthly and hopes to be in a position to receive new inquiries soon. Dozens of existing Israeli records, including the world's heaviest strawberry and the longest wheelchair tennis match, as well as the largest mezuzah, still remain on the Guinness site.
Your dream apartment in the holiest city in the world is just a click away. Am Yisrael Chai, the lifeline for so many chesed operations in Israel, is holding their annual Dream Raffle, where one ticket only can buy you a luxurious apartment in the heart of Jerusalem. Don't win the apartment? No problem! All raffle proceeds from all tickets go directly to one of the incredible organizations that Am Yisrael Chai supports. And for the first time ever, the apartment is fully furnished. Don't miss this incredible opportunity to actively donate to Israel's functionality and, on the way, potentially score big and win the apartment of a lifetime. Scan the QR code now to join.
The European Broadcasting Union is today meeting to decide whether to expel Israel from the Eurovision Song Contest. Israel, in response, is pushing back. A delegation from the Cannes public broadcaster are in Geneva for today's European Broadcasting Union General Assembly, where member states will debate whether Israel should be disqualified or allowed to participate. Several countries, including Ireland, Spain, Slovenia, and the Netherlands, are leading a campaign to oust Israel over its conduct in the Gaza war. And some are threatening to boycott the contest if Israel participates. But Austria and Germany are strongly backing Israel's continued participation, with reports that Berlin could even withdraw if Israel is removed. The 2024 competition in Sweden saw large street protests over Israeli participation. There were also protests in 2025 over the participation of Israel's Yuval Raphael, herself a survivor of the October 7th massacre. Khan says its representatives will make a strong case for Israel at the two-day meeting. Israel has won the contest 4 times since joining in 1973, the first country not geographically located in Europe to participate in the competition, which now features entries from as far afield as Australia. And today, we once again have the pleasure of hearing from Yael Eckstein, president of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, as she brings us the latest highlights and inspiring updates from the fellowship's ongoing work.
Shalom, my friends from here in Israel. I'm Yael Eckstein, and here are 2 fellowship projects that you should know about this week. Number 1, Tomer and Dolev are new parents, and their baby came in a very unexpected way. They live in a small apartment right outside of Jerusalem, and at 25 weeks, suddenly she felt extreme pain in her stomach. She was rushed to the hospital, and immediately they realized that she needed life-saving medical intervention. The fellowship was there for them when the baby was in NICU to provide physical, emotional, and financial support, and we continue to be there for them today. Number 2, the fellowship recently opened a resilience center in Sdot Negev. This is the area right on the border with the Gaza Strip. All of the Israeli residents there are experiencing still the trauma of the October 7th attacks and war for 2 years already. The fellowship is there to give them the tools that they need to continue to live life in joy, in faith, and with resilience. This is one of dozens of resilience centers that the fellowship has helped build because we believe the people of Israel need to be strong to continue living out this destiny that God has promised. Well, there you have it, friends. There are 2 fellowship projects that you now know about. Join me here next week, same place, same time, for more updates directly from the Holy Land. Shalom.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 15 degrees Celsius or 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see sunny skies alongside steady temperatures, seeing highs of 26 degrees Celsius or 75 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels and our live channel. You can also catch us on Screen IL with 24/7 live coverage. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you for watching.
Like before the war, as you said, throughout the judiciary reform, you saw that companies started being founded in the US as Delaware companies, and the entire trend shifted. 80% were founded as foreign companies. And then just after October 7th, you saw a flip in that sense. And companies started being founded in Israel. Also see that M&A is better than it's ever been. That's a vote of confidence in the Israeli technology.
Hello and welcome back to the ILTV podcast. I'm Ayan Hoffman, executive editor of ILTV, and I'm so happy to welcome back our viewers and our listeners. Now today we have a very interesting guest to take a deep dive into the Israeli economy as the war on all 7 fronts begins to wind down. That guest is Kerem Nevo. She is the Vice President of Growth at the Israel Innovation Authority. Welcome, Kerem.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. Now, there's been some new reports that have come out in the last couple of months from the Innovation Authority. Tell me about those couple of reports and where the state of the economy is holding today.
So the Israel Innovation Authority is doing reports in the past, 10, 20 years. It's nothing new, but I think in the past 2 years, this was more significant due to all of the trends and challenges and changes we see in the Israeli economy. So we've been tracking a few numbers, a few data points to see how the tech sector is doing really to the depth. So the yearly report this year was around 3 things. One is the state of investments and M&A. Like we are tracking how many investments are being done in Israel, how many investments being done by sector and by stages. We are tracking how much venture capital, Israeli venture capital, are raising money and how are they doing. And we also try to look at M&A and to see trends in M&A. So this is like the basics. This year we've done something special. We've dedicated a whole chapter basically to deep tech ventures in Israel to see in global benchmark how are we really doing in those areas.
So you talk about deep tech. Can you, for our viewers, define deep tech?
For sure. So that was the main concept of this report, was to define what is a deep tech company. Because this is now like a buzzword, everybody's using deep tech, but no one has a really good definition. So if we look at deep tech companies, they will usually solve one of the bigger problems or challenges that human beings are facing. So it will not be another cyber company, another software company, but something that is going deeper in our health, in solving our needs in transportation, in energy, in those areas. Deep tech companies will need more capital in order to be able to solve those problems. And also, the technological risk will not go down in the first couple of years. It will take time for the technology to mature. So these are the main definitions of a deep tech company.
For sure. And the report talks a lot about the resilience in a year when Israel was literally at war on so many different fronts. There's also a lot of rising anti-Semitism worldwide, which is, of course, anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, very tied together, which could, in fact, affect investments in Israel. And yet what the report showed, if I remember correctly, is that investments in deep tech are actually booming. So how do you explain that?
I think investments in Israel are doing well, very good, more than we have expected. So if you look at investments in companies, we've actually seen a rise since 2023 and moving forward. So everything is not stable but going up in general and in deep tech specifically. And you also see that M&A is better than it's ever been. That means foreign companies did acquisitions in Israel of Israeli tech. That's a vote of confidence in the Israeli technology. Even if you take out two very big deals that were made in the first half of 25, which is Wiz and CyberArk, you still see that the first half of 25 is as big as the entire year of 23 was. So that's pretty amazing.
That is amazing. And alongside that increase in investments and the mergers and the acquisitions, as you mentioned, we're also seeing a bit of a decline, though, in Israeli funds being able to raise new capital. And I'm assuming that sort of offsets in some way. How does the Israel Innovation Authority view that kind of trend? And, is that unique to the Israeli market, or is that something we're seeing in other places? So maybe it's not tied to the war.
Yeah. So I'll start by saying this is something we see cross borders. Investments in VCs went down in the US and in Europe in the past 2 years due to the changes in interest rates, right? So you don't have to go all the way to high-risk ventures. You can just put money in the bank and you'll get an income. So you don't have to invest in such high-risk ventures. You also see changes because the bubble we had in 2021 burst, and those ventures who investors invested in were not that successful. So you see those trends going globally. You see consolidations of funds in the US. You do see that the decline in Israel is a bit higher, and we see it as part of everything that was going on in the past 2 years. So I want to say we've taken action in that sense, and in the past 2 years we've been investing in VCs directly and indirectly. So we had this big Yozma fund that was dedicated to have Israeli institutional investors investing in VCs, which we double up. And we had just recently a new fund that invests directly into VCs that invest in deep tech. So in those two cases, we are trying to even the playing field and have Israel as competitive as possible.
And yet, we are known as the startup nation. We've always sort of prided ourselves on our ability to build these startups and to see them to get bigger. We eventually sort of thought of ourselves as the unicorn country. If we were to look even 10 years from now, based on what you're seeing today, and I know you're not a prophet, but would you be able to predict that in 10 years, Israel would still be among the number one places to invest? Or do you think things are starting to change? And if some of these trends continue, we might end up in a different place?
So I think we are in a very interesting starting point today. Like, if we look at the report, we can see that a lot of the money that was raised in Israel was raised in bigger rounds, meaning it was raised for more mature companies. We see an increase in $50 million and up rounds. So you see that the unicorn status is kept and is kept well. What's interesting today is to look down the funnel and to see the really, really early stages starting to emerge. Now, and we're trying to explain to ourselves, how come we see this trend of we have this really interesting fund that invests in an entrepreneur that just has an idea. So they're thinking about opening a startup. They don't know yet, and so we are giving them around $80,000 just to start POCing their idea. And in that fund, we started seeing more and more demand. Today, we see a 50% increase in demand and also in quality. So if we want to explain that phenomenon, think about this man or woman that spent the past 2 years in reserve service, doing real life, challenges and trying to solve them. They're coming back. They haven't been to their, initial work for 2 years now, and they maybe don't want to go back. And they have this idea of how to solve real life problems. So they come to us, they ask for a grant. We see the quality is higher, meaning that they're really after big challenges. And these can be the next, big startups for Israel. So we are in a very interesting starting point, in my opinion.
And I was speaking to one of your colleagues not too long ago who actually mentioned to me that there was something very interesting, which was that reservists that sort of met in the fields came together and applied for grants together. People who maybe were in different fields or had never worked together, but now had ideas that they wanted to build. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's true. And we see a lot of those couplings you get doing reserve service, people from different fields, from different disciplines coming together. That creates, real new ventures that are super interesting, and we will be happy, to take them through the pre-seed, seed, and A rounds as they grow.
And I know this is the longest war that Israel has had, ever at this stage, and that this is a war that is very different than wars that we've, of course, had in the past. But have you seen these trends work out in other wars or in past wars? In other words, when there were reservists that came in, do their companies turn out to be successful?
So I will say I started working in the Israeli Innovation Authority on October 8th. So my experience is as long as this war that we've experienced. But I have to say, yes, I think I've worked at Wix for 10 years. Before I joined the Israel Innovation Authority. Wix was founded in 2008, just in 2006, and raised money in 2008, just when, the big financial crisis hit. And I think this way Wix was built strong. It was built to last over crisis because it was born in a crisis. I think that when a company or a venture is being founded in a moment of challenge, they are being built healthy, and they really, follow challenges that are important and not, mediocre stuff.
And you're sort of answering my next question, I think, with regards to then why Israel, why now? If you were an investor, head of a VC or an LP, and you wanted to think about, should I invest in Israel? I'm not doing it yet. Why would today be the reason to get started?
So there is everything I said about this moment in time after the war, but I think a couple of more things are worth mentioning. The second is, I think it's not by accident that we see so much M&A going on today. Prices in Israel are good after the war. Israel is always around good, solid technology, great teams, great talent. But now, today, when foreign companies come here, they see companies who has had the resilience of operating throughout the past 2 years, throughout the past 5 years. Like, think what happened here before the war. We had COVID, we had a financial crisis in tech specifically. So those companies were built to last, were built resilient and agile, and were able to go through so much. And those companies are today doing really, really well, in the like financial side. But also you see that those companies are really in good valuations and good prices. So the investors come here for a reason. Having said that, Israel is also a place for good tech. And the past 2 years, we saw this tech in the battlefield. We saw it in the sky throughout the Iran war. Like, Israel deep tech is something that is proven that I don't think has a lot of competition worldwide.
So would you be able to compare Israel's ecosystem at all to, let's say, Silicon Valley, Berlin?
So if we look at deep tech specifically, and this is also something we've checked in the report, you see that Israel is the next hub after the US. Like, there are a couple of places in the US where deep tech is bigger and more mature than in Israel, but Israel comes just after that, before Europe, before anywhere else. So yes, I think Israel is super competitive in all the important fields, such as semiconductors, quantum, AI and AI applications, and medical health, and etc. Like, Israel is really in the frontier of those areas.
And if we are, so how are we going to ensure that that stays? And are there enough new entrepreneurs or startups working in these fields to ensure that this keeps growing?
So we've seen actually a decline in the past 7-8 years. We've seen a decline in the number of startups being founded in Israel.
Really?
Which, if you come to think about it, it's not necessarily a bad thing. You can see it as a way of the ecosystem to mature and have bigger companies being built and really the best teams forming, a new startup. But as I said, in the past year, we've seen an increase in that. And we as the Israel Innovation Authority are really investing exactly in that. Like, our biggest fund, the Startup Fund, is funding only deep tech and only early stage. So we take part in rounds. We take part in pre-seed, seed, and A in a non-dilutive grant. So we reduce the risk for investors to come invest in those startups. And we do pre-seed, seed, and A to make sure these deep tech companies have the best funding in order to grow.
So now you're mentioning this, the Israel Innovation Authority, just in case our viewers don't know, is actually part of the government. And it's a government entity. There's been a lot of talk or some changes in the tax system, right? There's some tax reforms that are supposed to be helping VCs. They're supposed to be helping make the M&As easier to accomplish. Tell me a little bit about the tax reform, the incentives that it's offering. Is it enough? What needs to happen next?
So the Israel Innovation Authority, what is worth mentioning, we are a corporate, actually. We are a governmental corporate.
Okay.
Which is independent and is investing, in professional, manner. So we do two things. One is to invest. We invest in both in companies and in VCs, but we also are responsible for the tech ecosystem regulation-wise, looking at everything and making sure Israel is as competitive as it can be with all of the relevant stakeholders. So I think the tax reform, which we've done with the Israel Taxation Authority and the Ministry of Finance, is around every stakeholder you see as important: multinational companies, private people who did relocation and want to come back to Israel, startups, growth companies, and investors. Each one of them, we try to look at two factors. One, is the system stable enough and clear? Like, if you're a foreign investor and you want to invest in an Israeli company, is everything clear to you, or is it like a black box that is making you feel uncomfortable? And these are the places we try to push through. And also, are we competitive? Like, if you will get better tax arena in different places around the globe, we will want to match that. So this is what we did in the reform. So it's around M&A, how an Israeli company can acquire another Israeli company to make sure the market is efficient. It's around multinational companies have been able to acquire companies here, but also to maintain a big, solid R&D center. It's around investors, Israeli and foreign, what is their tax incentives, etc. So these are the places where we try to push. I think it's a very good, aggressive tax reform.
Good. And I don't know if we've seen any results from that yet. Can you talk to that at all, or it's just too new?
It's a little bit new. Some of the parts in it needs to still go through legislation. Some of them are already implemented. I think that it comes really in the right time, because I'm guessing a lot of your listeners are foreign investors that are great Israel lovers, but are thinking maybe it's not the time to invest in Israel, and maybe we need to wait a little bit more on the fence. The idea is to tell them, listen, you will enjoy the best tax environment you can imagine, which will be solid, will be clear, will work inside the playground and with no exceptions. Please come. Israel is a great place to put your money in.
Amazing. Now, I also was reading statistically, though, that people are leaving Israel. And I know that even before we had COVID, then we had in Israel the judicial reform protest, where many people in the tech arena were talking about leaving the country. Many, in fact, did. And then, of course, the war started. Some came back to do reserves and to be dedicated, reunified when the war started, of course. And now we're starting to see, we look statistically, that there are still a lot of Israelis choosing to leave the country. And there's a fear of a brain drain. There's a fear that we'll lose some of our brightest minds, maybe not because of the taxes, but maybe for other reasons, quality of life. There's no war in some other countries, most other countries around the world. And at the same time as we're getting new immigrants, while we're getting more new immigrants because of all of the challenges to Jews around the world, it's not quite meeting the number of Israelis that are leaving the country. Are you concerned about the brain drain? Can you give me any data on that? And what is the trajectory or the plan for helping to get some of these talented people back in Israel?
So, you know, it's very interesting, because you see this, as you say, brain drain, but you also, I'm always looking at how many Israeli companies are founded Israeli. So you could have seen a really interesting trend. Like before the war, as you said, throughout the judiciary reform, you saw that companies started being founded in the US as Delaware companies, and the entire trend shifted. 80% were founded as foreign companies. And then just after October 7th, you saw a flip in that sense. And companies started being founded in Israel, saying, I'm Israeli. And I'm going to build this venture here to make it long last here. And after that, you see this number, you know, being based on 50-50. Okay? I think the moving in and out of Israel is kind of behaving the same. It's more of an emotional decision-making, which I think taxation, honestly, doesn't affect that much. What we want to make sure is that once you, let's say, decide to come back, you will have you will have positive incentives to do so, and zero negative incentives to not do so. So we want to see that every single asset you've been able to get outside of Israel will not be taxed here. We want to make sure that you will get the best option, like equity taxation you can get while coming back here. We want to make sure that you have the best place and the best ecosystem when you decide to come back. So we're not trying actually to influence that decision, but to make it as easy as possible.
Can you give me one or two concrete examples of where these types of incentives or the new regulations have actually made it possible for such a deal to go through or for someone to come back?
I will give you an example on how the system was manufactured. No one intended that this will be the way the system will work, but how does it work, okay? Let's say that I'm leaving the country to go and relocate to the U.S. to work there for, let's say I have a 2 years position in the U.S. So my lawyer and my tax consultant will tell me, listen, there is no way you can come back after 2 years. You will be taxed both in the U.S. and in Israel. You need to wait 4 years, okay? So I will wait 4 years. And then in 4 years, I will look and I will say, okay, if I come back now, I will not enjoy any incentive, but I will lose some rights I have in equity and other stuff. But if I wait 6 years, then I get some incentives and benefits. Maybe I should wait a couple more years. After 6 years, you will look and say, okay, but in 10 years, I'm getting a lot more incentives. Maybe I should wait 10 years. After 10 years, no one is coming back because children are already, in schools and you're part of a community and you're not coming back.
Right.
The idea was to maybe have everything being expedited and having you come back 2 years or 4 years after you left and not 10.
Incredible. So, we're going to run out of time, but I do want to talk a little bit about this idea of foreign investors who may be still nervous about investing in such a complex market. So what co-investment or syndication opportunities exist with strong local funds, corporates, public instruments that can help them get comfortable and move faster, especially given they don't speak the language and they don't know the system?
So I think Israel is enjoying two really interesting assets. One is the local VC ecosystem in Israel. You have so many local VC funds that have been investing in the Israeli ecosystem for 20 years. They know the ecosystem, they know the founders, they know how to due diligence early stages. And I think the best kind of corporations we're seeing is those foreign VCs partnering with Israeli investors and co-investing together. This is something we are trying to increase with our funding. So our funding today, as I said, we are investing directly in deep tech VCs that will invest in Israeli tech. We can give this incentive that can go up to $10 million per VC. We are investing both in Israeli VCs, but also in foreign ones who will build an Israeli entity. And I call everyone who are watching, contact us, we can assist. But those corporations are also happening without us, which is great. The second asset I think we have is the institutional investors, the Israeli institutional investors who are investing both directly in companies and also indirectly through funds. They're investing in Israeli funds, in foreign funds, and they have been a real professional player that is investing more and more in the tech scene. So I think these are the two main pillars the Israeli economy has.
So last question. We're getting close to 2026. We're just about a month away. What is your resolution, your New Year's resolution for the Israeli ecosystem, the Israeli economy as we go into the new year?
So I think we have been so focused on the early stages, on building new startups. But I think we need to think a little bit more about the more mature companies we have, which are huge assets. We have both strong growth companies and mature companies in Israel. And I think we need to have more thought into how to make them more Israeli. Like, we know that R&D centers are super easy to be funded in Israel, and the talent here is amazing. But we can also have more salespeople here. We can have the e-commerce, the financial side, the strategic side. Everything can be Israeli. I think we have a really mature talent today and a mature ecosystem that can support building big companies in Israel, not only startups. So I think this is where my heart is these days.
It's a great vision. Well, Kerem Nevo, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you for your time.
Australia's Jewish community is sounding the alarm over a sharp rise in anti-Semitism as new data and a Senate probe into bias reveal a reality far more dangerous than many Australians realize. ILTV's Mayan Hoffman has more from this report from Down Under.
A new report by the Executive Council of Australian Jewry records 1,654 anti-Semitic incidents between October 2024 and September 2025, still about 3 times higher than before October 7th. Overall, numbers are slightly down from last year's record, but serious attacks like arson and vandalism have risen, including the firebombing of the Adass Israel Synagogue in Melbourne and multiple attacks on Jewish businesses and synagogues in Sydney. The report warns that anti-Jewish racism has moved from the fringes into the mainstream, on campuses, in workplaces, and in the cultural sector. Jewish students are staying away from lectures. Parents say their children are abused on public transport. And many adults now think twice before wearing visible Jewish symbols.
But after October 7th, suddenly the radicals, and not only the radicals in the Islamic community, a vast majority of the Islamic community started, with their everyday anti-Semitism, and they have allies to justify it.
Inside the community, the response is mixed. Some are drawing closer to Jewish life, with fuller synagogues and packed Aliyah information nights, while others simply try to keep their heads down and avoid any talk of Israel in professional settings.
The future of Australia is actually quite dark. I have always see myself and describe myself as a proud Australian patriot, so I hope fighting back is the way, but I'm not going to lie, I feel like I have a backup plan.
At the same time, a Senate committee was expected to hear submissions about alleged systemic anti-Israel bias at the ABC, from combative interviews with Israeli officials to hours of airtime for activists accusing Israel of genocide, while detailed legal rebuttals and reports on Hamas abuses receive little or no coverage. The discussion was tabled at the last minute, but community advocates argue that when the national broadcaster repeatedly frames Israel as a villain, it helps normalize hostility toward Australian Jews.
What's alarming is the severity of some of these things, with firebombing of synagogues and Jewish businesses, they're both very triggering things for our community.
I believe that we should just be proud of who we are and not be ashamed of our identity, because if we hide who we are, then no one will understand what we're like.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. We're live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. I'm Devo Klein, and here is your roundup of the latest developments coming out of Israel. Netanyahu will not resign from his political role if he is pardoned from his trial. The Prime Minister delivered this message during a joint press conference with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz as the two met in Jerusalem. New details emerging from this meeting suggest that Chancellor Merz is supportive of a quote-unquote pathway to a two-state solution. To that, Netanyahu has reportedly replied, "They had a Palestinian state in Gaza, and they used it to try and destroy the only Jewish state. We will not allow a state that wishes to destroy us." This development comes after the chancellor's meetings with President Isaac Herzog. There, the two leaders discussed more on relations between the nations. They both praised the friendship between the countries, reminiscing on memorable moments such as the sale of the Arrow 3s to Germany and unwavering German support for Israel on the international stage, especially ever since October 7th. Take a listen.
Nun haben wir gesehen, dass das Vorgehen der israelischen Armee im Gaza uns vor einige Dilemmata gestellt hat. Wir haben darauf reagiert. Wir haben aber auch gesehen, dass wir bis heute im Grundsatz keinerlei Differenzen haben. Israel hat das Recht, sich selbst zu verteidigen. Und das wird auch so bleiben, denn nur so lässt sich das Existenzrecht Israels sichern. Wir stehen zu diesem Existenzrecht Israels und wir werden Israel dabei immer unterstützen.
Clashes on the border with Hezbollah continued over the weekend, with the IDF renewing its airstrikes in southern Lebanon. The targets included Hezbollah weapons depots, training camps, and other terrorist infrastructure. The strikes come as Israel has expressed frustration over Lebanon's failure to disarm Hezbollah, even as both countries sent civilian envoys to a ceasefire oversight committee that met in Nakura. The Prime Minister's office said the meeting was held in a positive spirit, but made clear that disarmament of Hezbollah is mandatory. Tensions remain high as both Lebanon and Israel attempt to take down the Iranian proxy group, though the terror group has absolutely no intention of disarming or changing their mission of attacking Israel. Just take a look at this propaganda video published by the Hezbollah terror group. The video includes pictures of Israeli bases, posts, and civilian towns, as the terror group believes that they are all legitimate targets. That is who the IDF is targeting in southern Lebanon in recent days. And in Gaza, clashes also continue, with the IDF saying it eliminated 3 terror operatives who crossed the yellow line and approached troops. Meanwhile, the leader of the Popular Forces militia in Rafah has named its new leader. Hassan al-Duhaini will replace Yasser Abu Shabab, who was killed last week in internal clashes, according to IDF intelligence. The militia group has vowed to continue operating against Hamas and is working to boost morale in the southern Gaza Strip. All this as searches for the body of the final Israeli hostage are set to be renewed. Hamas and the Red Cross are reportedly looking in the Zaytun neighborhood to find the remains of Master Sergeant Ran Gvili, though experts say Hamas knows of his whereabouts and is dragging out the process as much as possible. And last week, Roman Goffman has been named the new Israeli Mossad chief, switching outgoing David Barnea in this prestigious role. But now, a new investigative report released by Israel's Channel 13 is revealing Goffman as a true hero and the highest-ranking Israeli injured on the morning of October 7th. Channel 13 released this video showing Goffman battling Hamas terrorists with nothing but his personal firearm, no helmet, no tactical vest, and no warning of what was unfolding. In the video, he is seen firing at Hamas terrorists on the road and then limping to take cover as he suffered multiple gun wounds to his lower leg. The report continues to detail the medics on the scene who used a tourniquet to stop the bleeding and then called an evacuation helicopter for the Brigadier General, the highest-ranking officer to be injured in battle. This revelation is sparking hope within Israeli societies, having such a hero and a selfless figure in such a prestigious role. And that's a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. I'm Devo Klein, and thank you so much for joining us for this update, and thanks for watching.
I'm in touch with people in Gaza even today, and they all tell me, what did you do? What is wrong with you? You were so close to help us and to eliminate this horrible enemy, and you just gave up. We need to be clear about the future of Gaza. If we will cooperate with a plan to reconstruct Gaza, while Hamas are still there, it will be a historic victory in the eyes of Hamas.
Welcome back to Axis of Truth on JNS. Well, from Africa to Minnesota and around the world, it seems that Islamist terrorism is a growing problem, plaguing the entire globe on every continent. And as we know, Gaza is no exception to that. Yes, there is a ceasefire, at least on paper, but this is despite the fact that all last week, for example, we saw repeated violations by Hamas and swift reactions by the IDF targeting Hamas terrorists in response. So let's zoom out a little bit on this issue. Is this ceasefire even plausible? Well, joining us to discuss is the world's foremost expert on Gaza and the former head of Kogod, as well as the last Israeli mayor of Gaza before the Israeli withdrawal. We sat down with Colonel Grisha Yakubovich last week to discuss the future of Gaza. Well, joining us now to discuss the latest situation and what will become of the Gaza Strip is Colonel Grisha Yakubovich, who is the former head of Kogod, as well as the last mayor of Gaza itself when there was still a Jewish community on the ground there. Now, Grisha has over 30 years' experience of advancing partnerships between Palestinians and Israelis, and today we're going to ask him what's going to become in the coming months and years of the Gaza Strip. Grisha, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure to speak with you. To start, Israel has achieved major military gains in Gaza. I think that's undeniable. But realistically, what is the next step? How do we move from a combat phase to something sustainable without repeating the same mistakes of the past in Gaza?
Well, Emily, first of all, I want to clarify one thing. When we say that Israel achieved a lot by our amazing soldiers, the IDF, it's in the eyes of the beholder. And we need to understand that, because what looks as a victory to us, and it is a victory, the other side, Hamas, the terror groups, the terrorists, they consider the situation as their victory. And we need to understand that, because it will have a huge impact on the future. Because if in their eyes they won, it means they should get more. And if in our eyes we won, it means they should get zero. And this is actually the basic understanding that we need to clarify. Because if you ask somebody, a Western guy who won, definitely it will be Israel. But if you ask any kid in Gaza who won, they will tell you definitely Hamas. And we need to understand that, because for them, being able to stand against us for 2 years and even negotiating with us about the ability to allow to 150 terrorists to move from an underground tunnel from Rafah to Gaza, this is a victory. Yes, for us, it looks like, they are begging and they're asking and they are using the mediators. And again, I want to be clear about it. For them, this is a victory. So as long as they stay in Gaza, for them, it's a victory. And we need to be clear about the future of Gaza. If they will stay in Gaza, and if we will cooperate with a plan to reconstruct Gaza, while Hamas are still there, it will be a historic victory in the eyes of Hamas, and maybe that's how they will write their own history. In Western approach, they suffered a lot of casualties and huge destruction and whatever. But for them, it's a matter of time. It can be fixed as long as we are on our legs. So if you ask me as an expert, how do I prefer that the future will look like in Gaza? That nobody will stay in Gaza, because I don't see that they have a future after what they did on October 7th. But if we will need to settle and to accept a deal, I think that we should this time put a price list, and we give nothing for free. And if they will want to get something, only if they will be able to provide us insurance, guarantees that they will be unarmed and that they will have no terror intentions in the future.
Now, I know that you've worked in Gaza for many years. I think you know it better than perhaps anyone I know. What does the reality on the ground look like right now in terms of Hamas remaining in power, remaining in command and control?
Emily, one of the things that I want to raise is that we are usually focused on one thing, and again, I'm not judging. Okay, I'm just saying that your question is towards Gaza. This is not the issue. I think that the issue is actually the West Bank. I think the issue is Lebanon. I think the issue is the Middle East. I'm
going to ask you about that too.
I know. I just wanna raise the dilemma because it's not only Gaza. It will have a huge impact on the West Bank. It will have a huge impact on the Palestinians in Jordan and in Lebanon. So whatever we do and whatever we implement in Gaza, it will impact us from the north and from the east and from Judea and Samaria. The reality in Gaza, there's a huge destruction there. Israel succeeded to defeat Hamas as a terror army, but not the ideology and not the terror groups. That as long as they are there, as long as they are negotiating, they will stay there. And I believe that we will not have a choice than to accept them as part of the solution, as it looks like right now. And I think that this is one of the biggest mistakes that we are doing right now. On one hand, we succeeded to achieve the impossible, the unbelievable. I never even dreamed in my I don't know the best dreams ever that they will release the live hostages, and we achieved that thanks to President Trump and to this brilliant deal. But the price is strategically is going to be huge, really huge, and they will have to solve many problems in Gaza: water, electricity, houses, jobs, education, healthcare, etc., etc. It will take time, and as more time it will take, it will be better for us.
Well, one of the things that we're already seeing Hamas do just in recent days, they're accusing Israel of cutting off aid or denying aid. What are you hearing, despite the ceasefire, what are you hearing on the ground from Gazans, from Palestinians about the situation when it comes to the humanitarian aid? Is this just another round of the PR game that they're playing? Because from Israel's side and even from the U.S., they're confirming that aid is flowing freely. So what are you hearing on this issue?
Let me share a phone call I got 2.5 hours ago from a guy that called me and told me, Grisha, please do me a favor. Can you help me? There's a truck of vegetables that I want to send to Gaza. And unfortunately, they asked that I will pay them 70,000 shekels. Just to pay to somebody that he will allow them to enter the truck live. I can send you the phone call. You can call him. And I got a phone call yesterday from Gaza from a guy that I used to work with him, and he told me, Grisha, for any truck that you will be able to coordinate and help us to bring to Gaza, vegetables, it will be 70-80 shekels that you will get. If it's clothes, shirts, trousers, whatever, you would be able to get something like 150,000 shekels per a truck. Now I'm asking you, who can pay such money? What is wrong here? What is wrong with us that we continue sending aid to Gaza, or we continue allowing aid to be entered to Gaza, knowing that they tax that, knowing that people are paying black money, illegal money to others, and the only ones who can afford such big, I would say, sums of money is only Hamas. They are the only ones who have the money. And what is going on in there is like Hamas renewed the tax collection. They started with renewing the executions. We saw that a few weeks ago. And then they renewed their, I would say, official police to create an illusion of law and order. But it's a lie. And they demanded that the UN would send the aid because it's simpler to steal from the UN. There are no UN employees there from the United States or from, I don't know, Sweden. They're all locals. So it's like, letting the cat to keep the milk. I don't know if that's the way to say it in English. And it looks like, unfortunately, we are lying to ourselves. And I think that the best example is what is happening in Sudan. Come on, guys. It's like 100 and something thousand Christians were just butchered a few weeks ago, and nobody cares. Nobody complains about the amount of trucks being sent to Sudan. Nobody. It's like nobody cares. Why? Because they are black people, and when it comes to Gaza, it's like I don't understand what is wrong with all of us, and I see myself as part of the Western world, and I'm asking ourselves, what is wrong with us? This is a terror organization that just executed people a few weeks ago, and we all saw that, and nobody cares, and all we care about is what is the amount of trucks that the people of Gaza got, knowing that Hamas is stealing them, knowing that Hamas is paying the salaries to their own executors as a salary instead of $100, a few bags of flour, so they will be able to sell in the black market. And we all know that. It's like, again, what is wrong with us? Now, you can ask whoever you want, Emily. I have one advantage, that I'm in touch with people in Gaza even today. I'm talking to them. They are calling me. I'm in touch with people from Bet Hanun, from Rimal, from Khan Yunis, and Gazans that left to Egypt. And they all tell me, they all actually told me, what did you do? What is wrong with you? You were so close to help us and to eliminate this horrible enemy, and you just gave up.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that you say that because it's similar sentiment on the ground inside Iran, actually. Iranians are very frustrated because they felt the taste of freedom, and then we ended up stopping the war. So I am familiar with that. But I think you also brought up something interesting.
And in Lebanon is also the same thing, by the way.
Yeah. You brought up something interesting about how they are already taxing the people in Gaza. And indeed, we saw reports in recent weeks of them charging a property tax for people whose homes have been destroyed. Like they're taxing literal tents that people are living in. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But I do want to ask you about
income.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the West Bank. We know that this is another front that certainly threatens Israel. There's a lot of activity of different terror organizations there, and this is under the control, for anyone watching, of primarily the Palestinian Authority, although Hamas also threatens their rule. I want to ask you what your take is on the stability of the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, particularly right now. Is this a body that Israel has potential to work with? Is there any future with them? And setting Gaza aside for the moment, just the front in the West Bank. We've seen terror organizations and the Islamic Republic try to fund organizations to funnel in weapons, even through Jordan. Is the Palestinian Authority even really in control?
Well, I'm gonna answer, Emily, but the answer will be like that, okay? If you don't mind, it will take me 2 minutes and I'll be done. We all heard about a word in Arabic that Hamas and people in Gaza and in the West Bank used. It's called muqawwama. I know that you heard about it. Now, what is muqawwama? Muqawwama, if you translate it to English, it will sound resistance. If you translate it to Hebrew, to what I understand, it will be terror. And what Hamas succeeded to do is they told the people that we chose the path of muqawwama, we chose the path of resistance, and this is the only way that we will be able to achieve our goals, free Palestine from the river to the sea. That's the thing. Fatah, Yasser Arafat, before Mahmoud Abbas, he at the beginning chose Oslo. He chose the solution in negotiation. Mahmoud Abbas declared that this would be the only way, and he's against the way of muqawwama. And the people asked him, okay, Mr. Abu Mazen, the president, what did you achieve? You achieved nothing. And what did Hamas achieve? They succeeded to kidnap Israelis. They succeeded to kidnap soldiers. They released prisoners. And actually, in our Western way in negotiating, we played it to the hands of Hamas to show them as the heroes of the Palestinian streets. Simple as it is. What way worked? The way of Muqawama. Now, just one comment. When you say Muqawama and its resistance, and people in the West repeat resistance, it brings you back in history to the word resistance. And the first time that we heard that we all used the word resistance was in movies of Second World War, the French resistance. It means the ones that are resistance are the ones who are fighting the horrible Nazi enemy. So the subconscious of the West was created for the last 30 years that Hamas is a good thing because they are the resistance. Let's be aware about that. Now, Fatah in the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority, it's all about Mahmoud Abbas. Okay, he's 89 now. Okay, we both agree that eventually he will leave us naturally, or somebody will help him. That's how it works here. And what will be the day after? And we see the events since May 2021 from the fourth round of escalation, Garden of the Walls with Hamas, that we see, I would say, terror, or I would say the third Intifada started in May 2021. And we see more and more Fatah supporters that are actually terror groups. And this is why Israel entered to another a huge operation in the West Bank to deal with those terror groups. But the moment Mahmoud Abbas dies, I believe that also the dream will die. And people will say, okay, the only way that we believe, that we choose, is the way of Muqawama. Because Fatah will also be forced to choose their way, and the way will be Muqawama, resistance. So we will see Hamas, Fatah, and Page all adopting I would say, the narrative of Muqawama. And the outcome of this process will be a Palestinian civil war. And in this Palestinian civil war, that we already saw signs in Gaza, by the way, with all those militias, some of them Fatah, some of them others, fighting each other. And we will see that process in the West Bank the moment Mahmoud Abbas leaves us. But then the competition will be between them about Muqawama and about who is better. And to judge somebody who is better is who kills more Jews. So the future that I at least see is that Fatah losing power, the PA losing power, they continue losing the power. And I don't see a leader that will be able to move or enter into Mahmoud Abbas' shoes, and he's already weak. And I don't see them avoiding from choosing the narrative of Muqawama. So actually, as for now, unfortunately, I'm pessimist, and the only thing that I see in the West Bank is the third Intifada in high volume, unless we do something right now, and we can. And I would say a battle between the Palestinian fractions about the hegemony in the Palestinian society, or who will lead them. Would it be Hamas, Fatah, Page? And the only way is who will execute, or who will be, I would say, in our understanding, who will be a bigger terrorists, who will have more blood on their hands. Will it be Fatah, Page, or Hamas? And they will celebrate, of course, dancing on our blood.
Well, I want to ask you, one of the things that happened in the past 2 years is we saw a lot of other countries, even some countries that were considered to be allies of Israel, recognizing a Palestinian state. What is the impact on the Palestinian Authority, on the terror groups that you mentioned in the coming months and years? What is the impact of this international recognition of a Palestinian state? Is it even possible that could work in Israel's benefit if they're being held to the same standards of a state internationally? Or is it disastrous, as so many Israeli officials have stated and have implied thus far?
It's a declaration of typical Westerns who understand nothing about the Middle East, unfortunately. And and it's connected exactly to what I told you at the beginning of a victory in the eyes of the beholder. It's like if they led a massacre October 7th and they are fighting us for 2 years, and somebody else declares, I don't know, that he will recognize a Palestinian state, automatically the people will look at who? At Abu Mazen, that they consider him as a thief, as a corrupted leader, or they will look at Hamas and they will say, oh, because of the muqawama that they are holding, because of this death narrative, and because of what they did on October 7th, and this amazing victory of this long 2 years war, this is why the West is forcing Israel to kneel and to accept a Palestinian state. Actually, the West, who understands, unfortunately, those people who understand nothing about the Middle East, are actually pouring content to the victory that Hamas is declaring against the strongest military in the Middle East. Simple. It's simple. And unfortunately, we don't understand. I do understand that. I hope that the other countries of our allies will understand that also.
Now, what can Israel do if you could give the Israeli government a plan for the next 6 months? What can Israel do both to deal with the threats in the West Bank, the problems of the Palestinian Authority, the situation in Gaza, and even broader than that, dealing with Lebanon and the head of the snake, the Islamic Republic of Iran? What should Israel be doing in the next few months?
First of all, we need to rest. We need to make sure that all the hostages are back home, and we need to heal. We need to make sure that our society, that our nation heals a little bit, reorganize. Number one. Number two, we need to improve our relations with our allies. And I think that our government knows how to do it. Any government, okay? It has nothing to do to the current government or any other government. Number two. Number three, intelligence. We need to be smarter next time, and we need to be way better with our abilities to have better and better intelligence. So next time, when the next rounds will start, we will hit them in the weakest spot, like we did in Lebanon, okay, with the beepers and whatever. And I think we can arrange things if it's in Lebanon, if it's in Iran or other places. And then we need to make sure that this victory of Hamas, in their eyes, will be somehow deleted. And I think that we could do that. It's not late, but we could do that, and we can do that. We need to take the weapons from Hamas. And I want to be clear about it. When I say weapons, it's not the RPGs, it's not the AK-47. It's the people. Because they want only one thing, Hamas. They need people. So they will be able to control them. If you take the people, so you will not give them ammunition as human shields. You will not give them ammunition to blame us with a humanitarian crisis. And you will not give them the ones that will vote for them. So if we understand that, so why not implement a plan that Gazans will not stay in Gaza? And I'm not saying that they will leave Gaza forever. I'm not saying that. I think it was a mistake that those plans were even shown. I said during the war few times, even if the price will be to build temporary cities in Israel, not only Egypt, in Israel, leaving Hamas by themselves in Gaza, they will have one of two options: or to raise the white flag or to die. Simple as it is. And yes, the people of Gaza would be checked, each one of them, one by one. We will make sure that they are not terrorists, and we have the abilities to do that. And we will provide them their needs, by the way, exactly what we are providing right now in Gaza, but in a way better conditions. and less, I would say, less trucks that Hamas will steal and sell it in the black market. It will reach the people. So if we really want to help the people of Gaza, let's help them to leave Gaza to temporary towns, neighborhoods, cities, okay? Guaranteeing to them with the mediators that it will be a temporary situation, a temporary solution until we will defeat Hamas in Gaza, or they can leave Gaza, we don't care. And then we will start the reconstruction process in Gaza.
I just want to ask, how can you build a policy like this when you're dealing with such a strong narrative of subversion from Qatar, from the Islamic Republic, that's parroted by Al Jazeera, that's parroted even by BBC, as we've seen, because the natural response that we're going to see from the anti-Israel crowd is that that's ethnic cleansing. Despite the fact that you're talking about a temporary relocation in order to preserve lives, they will call it ethnic cleansing.
No. It's not relocation. Don't use that. Don't you use that. It's not relocation. Let's be smart. We don't need to be right. Let's be smart. Let's use the same narrative that they're using. We need to help the people of Gaza. We need to make sure that there will be no humanitarian crisis. We need to help to educate the future generations of the kids of Gaza. We need to support the poor families of Gaza. Let's use the same slogans, the same narrative, the same plan, okay? Let's use the same tool that they are using against us, that it will help and support us. They want to avoid from a crisis. Let's make sure that there will be no crisis. We are only helping the people of Gaza. That's what I'm saying, Emily. We need to be smart. We don't need to be right. And if it's about time that we implement a plan that will be smart and not right. It's not about politics. It's not about the right wing of Israel that we want to build settlements. It's not about that. It's about helping the people of Gaza, the real people of Gaza, that are not terrorists. Just imagine, you asked me earlier, what is the situation in Gaza on the ground? No schools, no water, sewage all over, diseases. We have already kids for the last 2 years that did not study. They already skipped 2 years in education. We need to close the gap. We have a lot to do. And we have many, many, many amazing people all around the world that want to help the Gazans. So let's bring them. So they will help the Gazans in temporary towns in Israel that will be surrounded with fences, that we will make sure that it will be only for Gazans, okay? And meanwhile, we will make sure that Hamas will not be able to kill them in the future. We will make sure that Hamas will not be able to steal taxes from them. We will make sure that Hamas will not execute them in the future. I think you understand the point.
Definitely. I mean, I think that's an interesting proposal, but we do have to wrap up here. So, Colonel Grisha Yakubovich, I want to thank you for joining us on Axis of Truth, shedding some light on the next steps in the Gaza Strip and beyond. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to ILTV Security Brief. I'm Khaled Ben David. Each week, we focus on the latest developments in security and defense relating to Israel and the Middle East, impacting on this region and beyond. And we start with our top items of the past week. 6 Israeli soldiers are wounded, 3 seriously, and 13 Syrians reported dead after a clash between IDF troops and Islamist militants during a cross-border operation in the village of Bet Jin. The IDF says fighting erupted after the militants began shooting at the soldiers, who returned fire and were then aided by airstrikes. During ongoing security operations in Judea and Samaria, IDF troops neutralized a terrorist after he stabbed and lightly injured 2 soldiers near the Ateret settlement in northern Samaria. Another terrorist was eliminated near Hebron after he lightly injured a soldier in an attempted car ramming attack and destroyed the family homes of 2 terrorists, one in Nablus that belonged to a member of the terror cell that attempted to carry out bus bombings in Cholon and Bat Yam, and the other in the village of Aqaba, belonging to terrorists who shot dead Yonatan Deutsch at the Mahola Junction in April 2024. In response to shooting attacks directed at IDF troops in Gaza, the IDF launches airstrikes at terrorist targets, one of which takes out Ala al-Din Khudari, a commander of the Islamic Jihad Nukhba Brigade in Gaza City, who took part in the October 7th massacre at Kibbutz near Oz. Forensic examination of the latest remains handed over by Hamas show that they are not of the 2 remaining dead hostages held in Gaza, Staff Sergeant Ron Higivili or Thai worker Sudasak Rinthalik. The Islamic Jihad terror group then claims they have uncovered another hostage body in northern Gaza, which will soon be returned. As the IDF's Haredi Hasmonaim Brigade marks the first ever graduating class of its squad commander's course, the Knesset debates the government's proposed legislation on draft deferments for the ultra-Orthodox community. Opposition leader Yair Lapid and former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett slammed the bill, charging it will extend deferments rather than boost Haredi enlistment. And now our big story. The IDF's cross-border raid into the village of Bet Jin in southern Syria, in which 6 soldiers were wounded and 13 Syrians reportedly killed, was the most serious ground operation across the northern border yet since the fall of the Assad government. The IDF says the operations are essential to preventing Islamist militant groups such as the Jamal Islamiyah, whose fighters opened fire on the Israeli troops in Bet Jin, from establishing bases in southern Syria. Israel also accused forces of the new Syrian government of aiding the Islamists, with some security officials suggesting the IDF may need to expand its operations there. But that view differs from the Trump administration, which has lifted sanctions and established relations with the Damascus regime, with President Trump even warmly welcoming the Syrian president, Ahmed al-Shara, into the White House. Now, after the most recent clash, Trump released a message saying it is important that Israel maintain a strong and true dialogue with Israel, and that nothing takes place that will interfere with Syria's evolution into a strong and prosperous state. Trump also invited Prime Minister Netanyahu to Washington to discuss this and other issues. Here's what Netanyahu had to say.
אני פה עם פצועי צה"ל הגיבורים, אחרי הפעולה האחרונה שלנו בסוריה. אחרי ה-7 באוקטובר, אנחנו נחושים להגן על היישובים שלנו בגבולותינו, כולל בגבול הצפון, ולמנוע התבססות של טרוריסטים ופעולות עוינות נגדנו, להגן על בעלי בריתנו הדרוזים, ולהבטיח שמדינת ישראל תהיה פתוחה מהתקפה קרקעית ואחרת מהאזורים צמודי הגבול. מה שאנחנו מצפים בסוריה לעשות זה כמובן להקים אזור חיץ מפורז מדמשק ועד אזור החיץ, וכמובן מבואות החרמון ושיח חרמון. אנחנו מחזיקים בשטחים הללו כדי להבטיח את ביטחון אזרחי ישראל, וזה מה שמחייב אותנו. ברוח טובה, בהבנה של העקרונות הללו, אפשר גם להגיע להסכם עם הסורים, אבל אנחנו נעמוד על עקרונותינו בכל מקרה.
And joining us now for more is Iftach Berman. He is a geopolitics expert at the Middle East Learning Academy and Bar-Ilan University. And we have also the former U.S. diplomat and now editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Strategic Tribune, Robert Silverman. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Iftach, I want to start with you. We heard Prime Minister Netanyahu, what Israel is going to require from Syria, but there is a big debate here. Can Syria, can this new regime, can President al-Shara be trusted?
Well, certainly al-Shara himself, he's a man whose aspirations talk about the presidency and uniting Syria. The question is, can he rally the troops? Can he organize the different militias? We know that these different organizations came under Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, and now they're all coming into these different elements in the government. The question is, can he rein everybody in? Can he bring law and order to the different parts of Syria and have the different arms of Syria function on the day of tomorrow? That's the big question, and this is something that is hard to tell at this point.
But what's your evaluation based on what you're seeing?
I think we're still at the pilot stage. We're not there yet. He needs to bring the Druze in, the Kurds, also on the coastline. The Alawites are claiming still not to be included and still some violence against them. So he's not at that point where he can, I'm not going to say trusted, I'm going to say be able to deliver.
Right. And Robert, the Trump administration seems more optimistic about the prospects of the new regime being able to deliver on some of these conditions Israel's made. How is there a basis for that? And how much do you think President Trump is likely to pressure Prime Minister Netanyahu to make some kind of concessions there with Syria?
Well, I am more optimistic. We all should be. We have to be realistic about the different options in Syria. Let's remember, it wasn't that long ago that Iran had bases all over Syria, and those don't exist anymore. Iran is no longer on our northern border with Syria. That's a huge plus. So, of course, we should all be optimistic. That's just a fact. Now, I mean, that doesn't mean you trust the new regime, but you should try to work with it. If the alternative is chaos there, the kind of chaos that allows Iran to come back in and set up missile bases, as it was doing a little more than 1 year ago, then that's a much worse situation. So we're in a far better situation. We should be optimistic. In addition to all the military steps that Israel is taking, which I think we should all support security on our northern border, obviously, we should also have a strong diplomatic outreach. The problem with Israel today is it has a super effective military wing. It has not invested in diplomacy. It has basically outsourced its diplomacy to the U.S. That's extremely dangerous for Israel. And we need to reinvest in other tools while we're continuing to keep the military strong.
Right. If you could respond to what Robert is saying, but I want to ask you, he does make the point that this new regime, whatever its faults, shares Israel's concerns about Iran. But there is another player in the region, Turkey, which this new government in Damascus is quite close to. So how much concern should there be in Israel about Turkey basically replacing Iran as a major player within Syria?
I would say that this is a triangle of three participants, Turkey, Israel, and Syria. The Syrian government and Ahmed Ashara himself is looking for a strong ally. It could be Israel. Israel could play that card. However, Turkey is the one that trained the Syrian militants to take over Assad regime. And Turkey has bigger aspirations in the region rather than Israel just wanting to maintain its border. Turkey is looking to get into more areas geographically and geopolitically. Gaza Strip, we're seeing them trying to influence there. So Israel should be concerned more about Turkey's prospects in Syria. And for that reason, I agree with our colleague here that Israel should play a more involved role in Syria on trying to fend Turkish involvement in Syria tomorrow.
Robert, trying to fend Turkish involvement in Syria, how well will that play with President Trump when we've heard him repeatedly praise President Erdogan, calling him even his dear friend and a close ally?
Right. Well, of course, they are allies. They're NATO allies of the U.S., so that's a fact. And but I disagree a little bit with our friend Iftach here. Israel is not in a position to become an ally, an offsetting factor to Turkey in Syria, but the Gulf states are. Saudi Arabia is, and they're a moderating force on the outcome. We don't know what's going to happen with Syria. If anyone tells you that they know what's in the heart of Ahmed Ashara or what's the future of Syria, don't believe them. It's unknown.
but Israel can help affect it from the outside. Look, there's an ongoing state of hostilities between Syria and Turkey. There's been armistice, between Syria and Israel. There have been armistice, and the border was basically quiet during the Assad family's rule. But at the same time, especially in the last few years, Iran was establishing missile bases all over Syria. That doesn't exist anymore. We have to be clear about the main enemy among all the different enemies: Iran, Iran, Iran. Iran is not in Syria. At present, the Syrian government is stopping arms shipments that used to go overland from Iran to Iraq to Syria to Hezbollah and Lebanon. Those are being stopped right now at the Iraqi-Syrian border, at Bou Kamal border crossing. That's positive. Now, you can build on that. But you have to have an effective diplomacy arm. You have to work through intermediaries, not just the U.S., but intermediaries in Russia, in Europe, and in the Middle East, and in the Gulf. The real offsetting factor for Turkey in Syria will be Saudi Arabia. And they don't, and that's possible. That's very possible. Look, Turkey is not the same threat that Iran was. I know that people get worried about Erdogan's statements. I get worried about Erdogan's statements, but it's not the same threat. And failure to understand that is a basic problem in Israel.
All right. Iftach, both you and we heard earlier Prime Minister Netanyahu mention the Druze community in Syria, which has come under threat from Islamist elements, and there are some who charge that at least part of the government forces perhaps could be working on behalf or in collaboration with those extremist Islamist elements. Israel has historical ties to the Druze. Of course, there is pressure within the Druze community in Israel to aid them. But how far can Israel go in maintaining the security of the Druze in Syria?
The Druze situation is much more elaborate, much more complicated than just saying either Israel is for the Druze or against it. We have a war that's going on much longer than this current iteration between the Druze and the Bedouin community in Syria. The elements that did rise against the Druze do belong in part to the Syrian government and play a secondary role defending their own agendas. Israel is instrumental in providing humanitarian and somewhat protection for that Druze community, as it should. However, overstepping its boundaries, and this is something that's being said today in Syria, is a dangerous move for Israel. It should be worried about its image of tomorrow if it's planning of establishing some sort of a connection with the Syrian government, to not overstep its boundaries. Yes, it is possible to create some sort of a green zone, if you will, an area of demilitarization where the Druze can fend for themselves and establish...
The buffer zone that Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke about.
Exactly. It's very similar to things that we've witnessed in Iraq. However, as we witnessed in Iraq, these green zones are not all the time effective. They need constant guardianship and so on. And I think that there is room for that. However, it's a delicate game between the different sides. And let's not forget those other elements in Syria, Kurdish elements that Turkey is eager to not get rid of, but at least have under control at bay.
Okay. Gentlemen, I do want to move now from Syria to its immediate neighbor, Lebanon. Of course, Israel has a, if you could even call it at this point, a ceasefire with Lebanon, considering the operations almost, it seems, weekly and certainly even maybe daily it's had to conduct against Hezbollah in South Lebanon. Morgan Ortagus, the U.S. envoy to Lebanon, was in Israel yesterday, going there today. And today we have what seems to be perhaps the first direct negotiations between non-military representatives of the Lebanese and the Israeli government. But of course, all of this hinges, Robert, on Hezbollah disarming, living up to that commitment. How likely is that happen in the face of a Lebanese government that seems impotent in front of Hezbollah?
Right. We have a core problem there. This is not new, of course. The Second Lebanon War ended with a UN Security Council resolution in August of 2006. so nearly 20 years ago, in which the Lebanese government committed itself to disarming militias, primarily Hezbollah. Well, that hasn't happened. And again, the ceasefire a year ago between Israel and Lebanon included, a new commitment to disarm Hezbollah in the south, and it hasn't happened. The Lebanese army has tried a little bit. They entered some bunkers, Hezbollah bunkers, that were booby-trapped, and when several Lebanese soldiers were killed, they stopped. So Hezbollah has deterred them from continuing that. Look, Lebanon is a failed state. We know that. Hezbollah controls it. What I could never understand, frankly, is the prior Israeli government under Yair Lapid signed a maritime agreement giving them a gas field without actually doing anything directly with Lebanon. It was all through the U.S. because the Lebanese government at that time, fearful of Hezbollah's reactions, refused to even meet with Israel. So Israel gave them whatever they wanted without any direct interaction. So the step at Nakura, where they're meeting face to face, is a positive, minor, small positive step. At least now they're meeting. Why the Lebanese government, after Israel has so severely deteriorated Hezbollah's military capacity, why it is refusing to exercise its own sovereignty and do what it's required under international agreements? I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist. I don't know. What I do know is Israel has to have more than just a military option. Yes, Israel can continue to batter Hezbollah and maybe should, including in Beirut. But if the U.S. says no to that, and the U.S. has its own interests, let's remember, there's a very large and significant Lebanese American community that cares a lot about Lebanon, okay? Let's just remember that. So, and that's part of the equation in the U.S. So, nevertheless, Israel needs more than a military option. It needs to be able to pressure the Lebanese government through diplomatic efforts, through coalitions that Israel develops with other countries that are relevant to Lebanon. But we don't do that. We don't have that capacity. We don't have the personnel to do that. So we're relying on the U.S. to do that for us.
Well, let me ask you, Yiftach, because Robert says Israel needs more than a military option. But if you talk to security officials here time and again, even in the studio, I have heard it is inevitable, or certainly almost inevitable, that there is going to be another round of fighting between Israel and Hezbollah. Do you also see it in that way? And are there other options to be pursued?
Well, I'll take us back just before October 7. We were conducting the Mabam, the campaign between the wars against Hezbollah in Syria and on a rare occasion in Lebanon. I think this is what we're expecting in the near future, unless the Lebanese government is strong enough to implement any serious steps against Hezbollah. And by that, the Lebanese government will have aid from the international organizations, from the U.S. We already see a worldwide campaign against Hezbollah's money in South America, potentially in Venezuela. This is something that the Americans are conducting right now. In Europe, we're seeing a crackdown on Hezbollah's operations worldwide. We just need the Lebanese government to do the same, its due diligence to replace Hezbollah with other things. But one has to consider, if you do replace Hezbollah, if you take away its strength, what would the Shia community in Lebanon do? We're talking about somewhere low estimates of 40%, higher estimates of about 50% of the population represented by this organization. Who will replace Hezbollah? Will Hezbollah take the IRA model, that they take the political route and abandon weapons? I don't see that happening, because the Shiites themselves have threatened Hezbollah that if they give up their arms, they'll finish them. In their own words, that's what they're saying. So I don't see that happening. And Hezbollah has taken care of the Shiite community's welfare, jobs, medical care. We've just seen the scouts of Hezbollah, al-Mahdi, demonstrate their power in the stadium. Who will go into that vacuum? This is something that Hezbollah is there for more than 40 years. So taking out Hezbollah just militarily is just not going to do enough.
All right. Not enough. But then let me ask you just very briefly, what could come in place of Hezbollah? What would we be looking at?
Well, the end of confessionalism is not in the horizon in Lebanon. It is sectarian representation. But you do have independent Shiite representatives in the parliament of Lebanon. Amal is weakened. Nabih Berri is corrupt, but there is representation there. Potentially, we could see taking over the mechanism, the security mechanism of Hezbollah and working it into the army of Lebanon, the internal security forces of Lebanon.
Right.
But the state has to come into the medical organizations, the NGOs, and all that. The state of Lebanon.
The state of Lebanon has to assert itself. Iftach Berman, Robert Silverman, thank you so much for joining us on ILTV Security Brief. And now a final word. This week saw the passing of Major General Dan Tolkowski, former commander of the Israel Air Force at age 104. Tolkowski was an ace fighter pilot who flew with the British Air Force over Europe during World War II, battled Egyptian planes during Israel's War of Independence, and led the IAF during the 1956 Sinai War. But his greatest contribution to Israel's security was perhaps in the field of technology. Tolkowski oversaw the modernization of the Air Force, including the introduction of its first jet fighters. And later, in civilian life, he played a key role in establishing Israel's tech sector as the CEO of Discount Investments, and then the founder of the country's first venture capital fund, Athena, helping to create such defense firms as Elbit. Now, another former Air Force commander also made news this week. Amir Eshel, speaking at the Defense Tech Week conference at Tel Aviv University, issued a stark warning. The aerial attacks that Israel experienced over the past 2 years of war, these are the low-flying killer drones from Lebanon and Yemen, the hang gliders from Gaza, the ballistic missiles from Yemen and Iran, were, Eshel said, but a taste of the evolving threats on the battlefield against which effective defenses had yet to be developed. He cautioned that the next wars will present Israel with challenges of far greater magnitude, and that the private defense sector will not on its own be sufficient in creating and providing affordable technologies to counter those threats. He called on the government and defense establishment to be more proactive in aiding Israel's tech sector to sufficiently develop in meeting that challenge. Now, just as Eshel was making that speech, the defense minister announced that the laser-based Iron Beam air defense system would be ready for deployment at year's end. And while that is certainly good news, it should not be cause for either celebration or complacency. Iron Beam will not be a 100-proof magic solution for intercepting slow-moving and low-flying drones. And even if it were, it's a response to Israel's past and current conflicts, not the answer to the new threats we will be facing. The only real answer to those future challenges will be needed investments in education, even as the government is cutting school budgets amid falling test scores in science and mathematics. It will be more funding for basic research, even as universities and institutions deal with cutbacks in public support, and in assisting the local tech sector, even as its leaders implore politicians to avoid actions that could discourage foreign investment crucial to its growth. Napoleon once famously said, an army travels on its stomach. Other generals, such as George Patton, stressed the importance of blood and guts. But today, it is brain power that fuels the success of modern militaries, and that's especially been the case for Israel. Soldiers such as Dan Tolkowski showed the way for Israel, and it is up to his successors in the IDF and government to continue maintaining that standard. Thank you for joining us on ILTV Security Brief.
Back to ILTV on the Hour. We're live from Israel, bringing you the biggest headlines of the region. I'm Deborah Klein, and here is your roundup of all of the latest developments that are coming out of Israel. Netanyahu will not resign from his political role if he is pardoned for his trial. The prime minister delivered this message during a joint press conference with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz as the two met in Jerusalem. New details emerging from this meeting suggest that Chancellor Merz is supportive of a quote-unquote pathway to a two-state solution. To that, Netanyahu reportedly replied they had a Palestinian state in Gaza and they used it to try and destroy the only Jewish state. He continued, "We will not allow a state that wishes to destroy us to exist." And clashes on the border with Hezbollah continued over the weekend, with the IDF renewing its airstrikes in southern Lebanon. The targets included Hezbollah weapons depots, training camps, and other terrorist infrastructure. Now, the strikes come as Israel has expressed frustration over Lebanon's failure to disarm Hezbollah, even as both countries sent civilian envoys to a ceasefire oversight committee that met in Nakura. Tensions remain high as both Lebanon and Israel attempt to take down the Iranian proxy group, though the terror group has absolutely no intention of disarming or changing their mission of attacking Israel. Just take a look at this propaganda video published by the Hezbollah terror group that's on your screens now. The video includes pictures of Israeli bases, posts, and civilian towns, as the terror group believes that they are all legitimate targets. That is who the IDF is targeting in southern Lebanon in recent days. And in Gaza, the IDF said it eliminated 3 terror operatives who crossed the yellow ceasefire line and threatened troops. Meanwhile, the leader of the Popular Forces militia in Rafah has named its new leader. He is Hassan al-Duhaini, who will take the place of Yasser Abu Shabab, who was killed last week in internal clashes, according to IDF intelligence. The militia group has vowed to continue operating against Hamas in Rafah and is working to boost morale in the southern Gaza Strip. All this as searches for the body of the final Israeli hostage are set to be renewed. Hamas and the Red Cross are reportedly looking in the Zaytun neighborhood to find the remains of Master Sergeant Ran Gvili. Though experts say Hamas knows of his whereabouts and is purposefully dragging out the process as much as possible. And a big milestone for the world of basketball. NBA superstar Deni Avdija has broken the record and is now the highest scoring Israeli basketball player in NBA history. The Portland Trail Blazers forward surpassed Omri Caspi's career total on Friday night, scoring 35 points against Detroit to reach 4,648 career points, a record he achieved far faster than any Israeli before him. Nicknamed Turbo, Avdija leads the entire NBA in drives per game and continues to be a force on both ends of the floor. If Avdija maintains his current form, he is on track to becoming Israel's first ever NBA All-Star. And finally, an inspiring message from the 221st Battalion. They are instructed with dismantling terror infrastructure in Sajaiya. The battalion is serving its 6th round in reserves, and now they are dedicating their battle against terror to the families who are waiting for them at home. Have a listen.
בני הזוג שרק בזכותם אנחנו מצליחים לעשות תעסוקה משמעותית, לפגוע במחבלים, להרוס את כל התשתיות על הקרקע ותת הקרקע. תודה לכם. שיהיה לאחור.
This is an incredibly inspiring message that reminds us that the soldiers on the ground are doing the proper work, but it's the home front that is keeping it all together, and we want to give a big shout out to the wives whose husbands and whose family members are still serving in reserves. And that is a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. Scan the QR code that's on your screen right now for all of the latest developments coming out of Israel. That is, of course, our ILTV app. I'm Deva Klein, and thanks so much for watching.
Unraveling on Israel's northern border. Both Syria and Lebanon, bordering Israel to the north, both seem to be unraveling. However, both Israel and the United States have very different postures towards both. Syria, it looks like Israel's being asked to pull back or at least calm down our actions by the White House. Whereas Lebanon, a special envoy of the White House who was in Israel just yesterday, is due to be in Beirut, where she's going to deliver a very clear message. Either Hezbollah disarms or Israel attacks. To unpack these, today my guest is returning guest Amiad Cohen, the head of the Israel Liberty Center, one of Israel's leading institutions on examining the Middle East and building our most important research, which is leadership. We unpack both of these stories. We go deep inside to understand what's happening in Syria. Why is President Trump asking Israel to back down? How is the Middle East related to the Far East? And what's coming next in Lebanon? Should Israel be using soft diplomacy, soft power regarding our arms sales to countries who condemn us publicly and hug us privately? Stay tuned. This was a fascinating discussion. I'd like you to click like if you like it and leave some comments. Thank you. Amiad, good to have you back in the studio.
Thank you for having me again.
Amiad, I want to talk with you about the North. Two countries in the North, side by side, Syria to Israel's northeast and Lebanon due north, both of whom are neighbors, but vastly different countries, and both of them seem to be unraveling. Yet Washington's response over the last few days to both of these seems vastly different. If we look at Syria, yesterday the United Nations General Assembly condemned Israeli occupation of the Syrian Golan Heights. President Trump's reaction was to put out a Truth Social quote that said he didn't condemn Israel, but he did say to Israel, nothing should interfere with Syria's prosperity, i.e. Israel, be very, very careful. On the other hand, Lebanon, which is just a few meters over the border from Syria, Morgan Ortega, who's the United States representative to Lebanon, was in Israel, meeting with the Prime Minister, the Defense Minister, and the Chief of Staff. She is set to deliver a message to Beirut, which is going to say either Hezbollah disarms or Israel is going to attack. Two vastly different approaches to two countries that lie side by side. Let's zoom, first of all, with your permission, into Syria. Israel last week carried out an operation in Beijing, just over the border. Maybe you can unpack this for us, because I don't know if Israel intended it, but this turned into an international incident, and it seems like we're getting some pushback.
Yeah, so let's start from the bigger picture and then drill down downwards.
Great.
You need to understand that the world is invested in Syria today. The entire world cares about that small desert in the middle of the Middle East. And let's unpack it for a second. So America's interest is stability in the Middle East, because remember, everything is in the background of China, America-China war to be, okay? We're like, America's planning a war and preparing for a war with China 2027, 2028, and to concentrate.
Wait, you think America's preparing for a war with China in 2 or 3 years?
Oh, of course.
Like an actual war, we're talking tanks, or we're talking soft power?
So, no. The assumption is China will attack Taiwan around 2027, 2028.
Which will draw America into the...
Obviously, the entire 96% of the entire high-end chips worldwide is in Taiwan today. Japan, the new Prime Minister of Japan just announced Japan will not set aside. China is trying to argue their ownership of Okinawa and some other islands towards Japan. There's a lot of stress in the Far East that America understands that it has to invest in preparing an army for once to deter China, and then to intervene if needed in the event of a war. But that's a given. The entire American military industry, national security, is all addressing towards the China challenge.
So the Far East.
The Far East.
All right, so now bring us to the Middle East.
They need to bring stability to the Middle East, not to waste efforts and munitions and military capabilities in the Middle East. So they want to stabilize the Middle East now. Syria today is the core, like the center of gravity of stability in the Middle East. So why is that? China, on the other hand, is trying to unstable Syria to create chaos in the Middle East. How do you create chaos in the Middle East? Iran wants to hurt Israel again through smuggling weapons through Iraq, Syria, and to Hezbollah in Lebanon, and to again, unstable the surrounding countries around Israel. So destabilization through Iran, destabilization China's interest in the Middle East through Syria, Turkey, as trying to Erdogan's plan to rebuild the Ottoman Empire. He's trying to destabilize Syria, to take control of Syria, and he's supporting Giuliani now by Turkish funds. Europe is begging for Syria to come to stability again, because they want to at least imagine that they will send out the 10 million Syrian refugees they have in Europe today back to Syria after Syria is stabilized. That is like the tension between two parts of the world, or three parts of the world, and Israel's in the middle. Israel in the short term wants stability too, because we want to calm down after the war, but we understand that we gained assets while taking the northern part of the Hermon mountain and having a perimeter inside Syria today in the eastern part of the Golan Heights, and we care about the Druze, but we want to prevent the Turks from taking control of Syria. So Israel actually prefers in the midterm now having some kind of instability. Now, on a tactical level, Giuliani forces, and we need to be very clear about that, Giuliani forces are jihadist, Al-Qaeda people who are like the Muslim Brotherhood on steroids. Now, why is Trump working with them? Because, again, he wants stability. Now, if you understand that front, small tactical events like we had last week, the end of last week, with 3 Israeli soldiers, officers actually being injured severely, but 13 Giuliani people in Beit Jan being killed by the Israeli Air Force. It's a tactical event that Israel went to stop a small team of people that we had intelligence to try to attack Israel. Now, the second there's a not clear border in that perimeter, there will be more and more instability in that region. Now,
which could, like, I mean, one of these cells could theoretically go over the border and carry out an attack against Israel.
It's not even going over the border. Israel has posts inside Syria.
So it could either be to attack soldiers inside their posts,
yes,
but even the distances to Israel itself from there is not that far.
It's 10, 20 kilometers, depends where it is.
12 miles. I mean,
yeah, but that is distance. That's a perimeter. We prefer them attacking the IDF posts in there instead of coming inside Israel. And there's attacking the Druze. Now, if you understand the population in Syria today, they are jihadists. They're begging. I can show you videos of jihadist people begging for Giuliani to let them. Now, the assumption is Giuliani will be murdered. Like the Giuliani regime is not stable on the long term, because the second he cuts a deal with the West, so if it's a tahadiyah, it's a short-term deal to stabilize everything, they will accept it. But if it's a long-term deal and he will really be part of the West, they will assassinate him and it will all dismantle and collapse again. So everyone understands this regime is a short-term strategy just to calm down, to buy time. And Israel understands that. Now, what's the solution? This is the important part. Israel has to offer a strategic solution for Syria. And what is that? Israel needs to come and offer to turn Syria into a federation of states. You need to have the Alawite state, the Druze state, the Sunni state, the Kurdish state, a variety of states working together, but to come to Europe and to America and say, listen, we want security, but this is our proposal to how Syria needs to look like. So in the meantime, the one imagination or the one plan that Trump and Europe sees, Germany and others sees, is either Giuliani controls it or chaos. If Israel comes with a third solution, we can be accepted in, okay, what's your plan? This is our plan. We need to secure the border here, build this as Jews' land. There will be the Sunni land, there will be the Kurdi land, and there will be a federation. And then, okay, that's a way to stabilize the region. But Israel is not offering a real solution. That's the real problem in Israel and Syria in the meantime.
The United Nations General Assembly yesterday, as I mentioned, condemned Israeli forces in the Syrian Golan Heights. Is that a red line? Meaning if the United States would say to Israel, withdraw right now, is that a red line for Israel? And does that open us up, if we move the border back to the actual original border, to another potential October 7th in the north?
On the short term, no. Israeli border in the Golan Heights is a very strong border. We have the hilltops of the volcano, like in the Golan Heights, a very clear territory that defended us in 73. And since then, we had a very clear geographical border. But today, after October 7th, it's not enough. and the perimeter we built there is strategically important, definitely in front of the chaos that we have in Syria. I don't see Israel withdrawing from Syria in the meantime. Definitely not without a clear solution for our security needs. Definitely not for the northern part of the Hermon Mountain. There's no real reason for us to give an unstable regime anything. But yes, we might get like orders from Trump to not attack and not being aggressive and helping Giuliani to come. So, Netanyahu yesterday said out loud, listen, we're coming with peace. We want to have a calm relationship with Giuliani. We understand America's and Europeans' necessity for stability there, but we will not pay the price of jeopardizing Israeli national security. And we need to understand, Syria is not a threat today. Our problem is in 10 years from now, where it's going to be.
Okay, let's contrast this now with Lebanon. So here we see that President Trump is looking to, for all the reasons you said, I just want to recap them. From the United States perspective, they want calm because they want to preserve the resources for in a possible conflict in the Far East against China. They want to keep this calm. Europe wants it calm because they want potentially all the 10 million Syrian refugees to go back, correct?
Right.
We're also looking that we're trying to block, from Israel's perspective, we're trying to use Giuliani, hopefully, to block arms trade, which is China's goal, that there should be arms going from Iran through Iraq, through Syria into Lebanon,
right,
into Hezbollah.
Just to destabilize the region, so America will invest time, effort in the Middle East, so it less invest in the Far East.
Okay. Now let's contrast this with Lebanon, where it's very clear with President Trump's blessing that Ortega is going to be delivering a message that it's either, okay, guys, it's been 1 year. This is now 1 year since Israel pulled out. Hezbollah has recruited additional terrorist fighters. They've replenished some of their stockpiles. They've dug tunnels. They seem to be pretty undeterred. Why is Trump giving his blessing to Lebanon, which is, again, attached almost to Syria and not Syria?
First of all, the situation in Lebanon is very different than Syria for one reason. There's a real government there. It's not as stable as we wish, but it has a real government with a real majority of population who wants it. The biggest minority in Lebanon are the Shiites, the Hezbollah. But there's a big, strong coalition of minorities who oppose Hezbollah. But they are too weak to destroy Hezbollah. And in the meantime, the one, let's say, goal of the agreement between Israel and America regarding Lebanon is that America will force the Lebanese army to disarm Hezbollah, which there was never a chance for that to happen. But before Trump, we cut this deal taking that risk to give Trump on January 20th, like we ended the war in the south, in the north, in Lebanon, and Trump got an good beginning for his tenure now, these 4 years.
It's just important to add before you continue that this was a deal that Trump wanted. It wasn't a Biden deal. Right. This was Trump that really asked Israel.
After the elections, before Trump went to
correct.
Office.
And
yes.
By the way, I'm sorry, just take you back 1 year before you go forward to the current times. Why do you think President Trump, it was important for him, since we're back in the same situation right now and it wasn't likely to succeed, that Israel pull out of Lebanon?
He wanted a win. And Israel gave up its national security in many aspects to give him that win. Now, Netanyahu had his reasons there because the IDF was unwilling to really go in a full-scale war up in Lebanon and invest its efforts there and destroy Hezbollah. So he traded here, and he gave Trump a good win to build a strong relationship with Trump on the long run, and taking the risk that we will need to fight again and restart a war inside Lebanon. But again, the difference between Lebanon and Hamas is there's a real opposition for Hezbollah inside Lebanon. There's a real government that doesn't want Hezbollah to run the country. It's just very weak and incompetent and unable to destroy Hezbollah. So Israel actually here gave up national security just for Trump. And American woke right need to understand that Israel is let's say, is America first in many ways in its national security agenda here to get back some things from Trump on the long run. Now, the Lebanese government is very weak. It's unable to dismantle Hezbollah. The only, let's say, military power who can dismantle Hezbollah and disarm Hezbollah is Israel. Now, everyone understands that today. The question is when and how it's going to happen. In the meantime, Hezbollah already got $1 billion funding from Iran, buying weapons. They're smuggling it there through many ways, very hard for them. And Israel actually created a situation where we kill an average Hezbollah operative a day since the ceasefire. We killed over 370 Hezbollah operatives in the past year, high level. A couple of weeks ago, we killed the chief of staff, the head of the army of Hezbollah. But they still have support. They still have 40 to 50,000 soldiers, highly trained. We dismantled, we decapitated, that's a phrase in Israel we use, the leadership, the officer, but they're rebuilding it. And they're a real army, and they will never give up. So this morning, by the way, announced a negotiation between Israel and Lebanon directly to have some economic relationships and some deals. Again, that will never work out without Hezbollah taking out of the picture, and Hezbollah is strong. Why is America willing to force itself on Lebanon and not enforcing itself on Syria? These are two different countries. Lebanon, no one cares if it will trickle down to a civil war. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really threaten Israel, create chaos in the Middle East. Syria, on the other hand, is a center of gravity. The connection between Iran and Lebanon, the connection between Iraq and maybe even jeopardizing Jordan in the south, that is still an unstable state with the majority of jihadists. There's a difference between the Shiites, who are a minority now, very weak because of Iran's weakness. And Iran is in a weak situation now. So it's very weak. It's not a real strategic threat. The real threat is the Sunni Jihad, the Muslim Brotherhood, which is supported inside Syria with Turkey, with a lot of money and capabilities. And stabilizing that is a strategic effort for America.
Take us back a year and let's compare it to today. A year ago, Israel made a pretty deep incursion inside of Lebanon. You were there. You were inside. I was also inside. Not as much as you, but you were actually involved in the fighting and in the destruction of some of those border cities to try to create a border. How has Israel maintained that border up till now? What's changed on the ground? Are we still inside Lebanon? And how effective is it? And are we protected again from an October 7th?
So the situation today on the border is Israel has 5 posts that are beyond the border, not in a serious way. It's a couple of, we're taking hilltops that are beyond the border. Remember, the Israeli-Lebanese border is a border that the elevated ground is on the Lebanese side. It's a very hard border to defend, so Israel took 5 points. By the way, a very not well-planned strategy. It was by chance in the rapid way that the deal was cut last year, but eventually we have these 5 points. They frustrate Lebanon and Hezbollah. We're still holding them, and we understand we will withdraw them sometime eventually in the future after we have some kind of deal, and Hezbollah will be weakened. That's how the IDF is spread today. But intelligence-wise, Israel is building rebuilding its intelligence capabilities in front of Hezbollah. And what very changed actually from 2 years ago, before October 7th, and what's happening today is the balance of power between Hezbollah and Israel. So since, let's say, the withdrawal from Lebanon in 2000, that Israel, the IDF and Israel withdrew from the security belt, we were deterred by Hezbollah. We were afraid of addressing that military challenge. And today, the IDF, again, as I said, is attacking on a daily basis inside Lebanon with drone strikes. If we need, we have soldiers entering Lebanon by foot. Israel is addressing the challenge in a very, very different way. And that's a good thing, at least in the meantime. How long will it sustain like that, I don't know. But in the meantime, it's good, but not enough.
I want to dig into this a little bit. This is called the post-October 7th defense doctrine of Israel, right? Military doctrine of Israel. Pre-October 7th, Israel was under kind of the sway of the United States. A lot of our upper-level generals, a lot of our staff had been sent to Harvard University, had been sent to the War College, and were adopting the United States view of containment, which, might work if your enemies are 2,000 miles away. Strike if you need to, pay them off a little bit, keep it quiet, keep it far away from us. But we did that for many years. And what we sacrificed, of course, was on October 7th, which almost was bound to happen because we didn't have an absorption area, right? There was no buffer to absorb an attack. And as you've spoken about on the podcast, this went against kind of the principles laid out by Ben-Gurion. Post-October 7th, Israel's now in this new paradigm to strike before the cancer metastasizes into a beast. Here, on the other hand, you have the rest of the world. U.S. still trying to do containment, like you said. Let's quiet down this area. How is Israel able to navigate the new post-October 7th security doctrine with the United States president and really the West that does not know what a preemptive strike is. They only know containment.
So I think the West does understand preemptive strike. And the best example is the attack on Iran. Just think about it for a second. I've been asked, I just came back from a couple of weeks in the States. I've been asked often again and again, why is Israel has a problem of explaining itself? Why is Israeli reputation so bad regarding Gaza? And I repeatedly ask the question, does everyone see on the media any condemning Israel on almost opening a third world nuclear war? By having a preemptive attack on Iran, for 12 days, we controlled a foreign state 2,000 kilometers from Israel, totally controlling its air, totally attacking its military leadership, destroying its air defense systems, destroying its nuclear facilities, and no one cares. For one very simple reason. It was a clear success. It was a very, very clear, decisive victory. We had a goal, a very clear goal, and we achieved it. It was very short, brief success. And the world said, okay, nothing happened. Let's continue playing chess or whatever we do. And that is an example of how Israel should do it. Now, long wars of attrition, like the Gaza operation the past 2 years that we had, is exactly the opposite. If we have no real goals, no real strategy, no real successes that are clear, and you can grasp them and understand them as a normal Western sitting in your field, in your cornfield in the Midwest, you can't understand a long-term 2-year war with a small town in the middle of nowhere. So it's a very different approach from the world because of our approach towards the war. Same thing now. If we have a clear strategy in Syria and in Lebanon saying, listen, this is our plan. We want Syria to be a federation. And the federation will come, we have that. That's the plan. These are the maps. This is who will control. We already have a conference with the leaders of the Alawites, the leaders of the Kurdish. That's our solution. That's a preemptive diplomatic attack. Then we need to come with a solution. The same thing with Lebanon. If we come tomorrow and say, listen, we're willing to have a deal with you, but we will come and destroy Hezbollah. That's our deal. And if not, we will attack and we will do that. To be very clear with a long-term strategic plan that is very clear to the world. Now, if we, on the other hand, continue in, let's say, unclear, like going with on the waves of what's happening today, think, oh, there was a tactical attack there, so yes, we'll follow it, we will not follow it. That's not a plan. That's a very bad situation for Israel. So the real solution here to prevent the world from, let's say, attacking us diplomatically on our efforts today in Lebanon and in Syria is by one thing, having a clear strategy how to address these challenges. The best thing that happened in Gaza, that's another good situation now, that at the end of the war, so we took 50% of the Gaza Strip. Hamas is still controlling the Strip, but there is a United Nations Security Council decision that Hamas needs to be disarmed. So we're ended like the war with, everyone agrees with Israel. We took 50% of the territory, understand the Hamas regime needs to be collapsed, and no one cares now. So if there's a clear solution, the world will be okay with that.
Let's play inside baseball for a second. I think the prime minister, to his credit, had wanted a clear goal post-October 7th, which was to go in and destroy Hamas. Maybe exactly how it would be done, day after type stuff. Maybe it wasn't exactly clear, and I think it wasn't clear for anyone, and sometimes you have to take the war to the enemy, again, as you and I have discussed, and we'll get to the day after once we deal with the day before the day after. The military establishment, along with the political establishment, along with the fact that we had hostages there, tied his hands to a great degree. Was there another way that we could have carried this out if we rewind the clock back to October 7th, that we could have actually had a clear victory there?
Oh, of course.
What would it have taken?
No doubt.
Kind of just giving up on the hostages and just moving forward? Or, I mean,
no.
What could we have done? So let's learn. It's not a condemnation. It's more of, okay, what can we take away from this?
So I'll respond to the answer, but let's look in Hamas's eyes. What did they think on October 6th? What was their plan for a second? Like, they know Israel is a big country. What was their plan? If you understand that Hamas knew that Israel would attack, but their goal was to just stay standing, like Rocky in the movie, Rocky Balboa, just staying on your 2 feet till the end of the battle. Even if you lose it, they won. That was their goal. And they understood that the time goes against Israel. if Israel understood the time goes against Israel, on the other hand, and we need to have a rapid, really clear strategy now to finish Gaza in the next 10 days or the next 3 months, yes, it was totally a different strategy for us, and we would have succeeded. How would it have been happened? The IDF, when it sits in its table, its planning table, and says, okay, what is the goal of this ground operation? It has decisive points of the enemy. Where is the critical point? We need to hurt it, and that will collapse Hamas. They thought